Stick with me. You and I are about to watch Gray face a sword duel in Villa Ranabu. Belder used every excuse to beat Gray down and humiliate him publicly. But today, that cycle of pain was finally coming to a dead end. Gray gripped the hilt, and without even a warning, Belder lunged forward to start the duel. With terrifying precision, Gray dodged every single strike. This had never happened before, and Belder felt a cold chill of realization. Then things took a turn for the weird. Gray actually closed his eyes, simply waiting for an opening. With a single move, he disarmed Belder. The bully admitted defeat, but for Gray, a simple apology wasn't going to cut it. He wasn't that coward anymore. To prove it, he brought the blade down with crushing force, striking the bully right there. Relax, it was just a grazing hit. Gray isn't the villain of this story, after all. He wanted to teach a lesson. So, he used the flat of the blade to send Belder flying. To everyone watching, and especially to Belder, the weak kid they knew had transformed into a lethal threat. The rest of the gang rushed him together, thinking 4 versus 1 might actually give them a chance. Wrong. All 4 ended up on the ground, heads ringing from a flurry of precise hits to count. Gray made it crystal clear. From this moment on, none of them would ever look down on him again. If they did, they'd end up like the leaf he just sliced perfectly in 2 right before them. Belder bolted, screaming about needing new underwear. But here's the thing, Gray is hiding a secret far darker than any of them know. 15 years in the future, Gray joins a legendary squad to face the ultimate world-ending threat, an entity known as the Liquidator. A monster so powerful it erased an entire continent from the map like it was nothing. To stop this nightmare, the most powerful warriors on the planet gathered for one final stand. A man who survived a giant's attack, and a sage with the power of a whole army. They were legends. A master archer and the world's strongest swordswoman joined them. It didn't matter. Every single one of them was slaughtered in seconds. Gray watched them die, helpless. He was just a low-ranked soldier, a disposable pawn whose name nobody would ever bother to remember. But just as the end arrived, the impossible happened. You and I are watching the impossible as a god named Kronos appears to save Gray from death. Kronos revealed that Gray's hidden power actually surpassed the Liquidator. He just had no clue how to actually control it. Gray was sent back into the fray, with a black sword crackling with red lightning to kill the beast. He actually managed to wound the Liquidator, something the world's greatest heroes had failed to do. It wasn't enough. The monster was invincible in its own dimension, and Gray's power was still too wild to master. That's when Kronos made a final move for good. He cast the monster back, and sent Gray 15 years into the past. This was his chance to start over and get it right. Gray opened his eyes back in Villa Ranabu, long before the world began to fall apart. Now pay attention here. This is where he ran into Belder's gang again, and we saw how that ended. With the bullies begging for mercy, Gray had one demand. He needed a referral to the prestigious Shinsira dojo immediately. He needed a way into the greatest training academy in the world. That humiliated bully was his fastest ticket inside. Belder scrambled toward the dojo to help him. In the city, Belder asked why he cared so much. Gray explained he needed that academy recommendation to move forward. One of the lackeys pointed out that Gray already seemed strong enough to skip the school entirely. Gray shook his head. His current strength was nowhere near enough. After all, the world's elite warriors had already failed to stop the Liquidator once before. Even with the black swordsman power, he hadn't been able to leave a single mark. He didn't know how much power he'd need to win. But he had clues now, and he was following them. For a brief moment, he felt like he could finally grip that dark power within. He focused on the holy swordsman's art. If he'd trained like that before, the future might have looked very different. This was exactly why Kronos had sent him back to this time. Meanwhile, Belder, master, was furious. He'd used the techniques she taught him to bully a regular civilian. And that's where we leave it. Stick with me to see Sarah's reaction next. Alright, you and I are jumping right into the heat as Belder tries to justify his actions, claiming his dirty fight was just a simple training session. Sarah is not buying it. She shuts him down instantly, snapping that attacking an unarmed person has nothing to do with real martial arts training. With her wooden sword aimed straight at Belder, she orders him to get lost and never show his face here again. She fires the rest of the gang too, stripping them of their student status. As they tuck tail and leave, Sarah turns to the main character to apologize. She had heard that he was looking for a recommendation to the academy, and she has a specific proposal for him. To make up for the trouble Belder caused, she offers to write that letter of recommendation herself, but there is one major catch. She needs to confirm his actual skill level first. She hands him a wooden sword, and it is finally time to see what he can do. She gives him the first move in their test fight. Gray lunges forward with a flurry of attacks, while Sarah effortlessly defends every single strike. Sarah is genuinely impressed. His sword skills are remarkably practical and efficient for someone as young as he is. He has clearly been through real battles before. She finds proof of this when he perfectly predicts her movement and dodges a lethal blow. His style is almost entirely self-taught, yet somehow it feels eerily similar to the formal sword styles taught at the Royal Academy. When he chains several blows together in sequence, Sarah wonders if he had a secret master. His talent is simply off the charts. She realizes he is a rough diamond that needs polishing. After surviving his rapid-fire assault, Sarah ends the duel by apologizing for what comes next. She stops holding back and goes all out, determined to defeat him once and for all to conclude their test. However, the main character manages to ghost her movements, dodging and defending her blows with absolutely incredible agility. Even under a mountain of pressure from her repeated attacks, he keeps up with her speed and refuses to break. Now watch this. Sarah started this to test him, but suddenly she is giving it her all. Why is she so terrified of this child? Suddenly, the main character unleashes a heavy slash dripping with pure, malevolent energy. Sarah dodges, her instincts screaming that something is wrong. The attack seemed rushed, and she moves in to finish the fight by exploiting his final weakness. But in that split second, the blade of her wooden sword is completely and utterly destroyed. The broken wood flies through the air as the main character feels that same terrifying sensation from the time entity surging through him. He still possesses that godlike power, but the intense discomfort is too much, and he collapses to his knees in total agony. His physical body cannot keep up with that level of power. He can barely stand, but he lies and claims to be fine. He realizes he cannot use that power recklessly anymore. For now, he decides to keep the truth hidden from the swordswoman. Even if he told her, she probably would not believe him. Gray tries to brush it off, claiming he just got a bit carried away. Sarah is no fool. She knows it is physically impossible to cut through a blunt wooden blade in that specific manner. She is sure he is lying to her face, but seeing how Gray is avoiding the topic, she decides to accept the situation for now. Getting back to the recommendation, Sarah confirms that she is willing to provide it for him. It is for the Swordsmanship Academy, which is the most prestigious educational institution in the entire kingdom. However, she tells him he is not ready. That competitive environment would be far too much for his current self to handle. Gray feels the sting of his own weakness. He realizes he can barely accomplish anything unless that mysterious power manifests. Instead, Sarah suggests the Unified World Academy. Believe me, we are talking about the most famous and renowned institution in the entire world. Upon hearing the name of the Unified World Academy, Gray is absolutely shocked. That is the legendary place where the Holy Swordsman and other heroes emerged. Gray asks if he can get in, but Sarah says it is impossible. His physical body is nowhere near being conditioned enough to survive as a professional swordsman. He might scrape by at the Royal Academy with just his skills, but at the Unified Academy, he would be completely unfeasible. Sarah wonders how he acquired so much high-level technique while possessing such a fragile and weak body. Gray knows she is right. The students there are true prodigies, and with his current physique, he does not even come close to them. But Sarah encourages him not to give up just yet. There are still 9 months left before the entrance exams begin. She admits 9 months is not much time, but she asks him to put all of his trust in her. She promises to put him through 9 months of absolute hell to get him ready. Gray is reluctant to suffer, but he accepts the challenge. He asks her to train and guide him. Sarah smirks at his response and declares that his torture will begin very soon. Days pass as Gray eats like a beast and dedicates every waking moment to his intense physical training. He sharpens his sword skills and tempers his body. 8 months later, Gray has developed a remarkably impressive and powerful physique. He is ripped and ready, and Sarah has nothing left to teach him. Trust me, you and I are about to see a legend born. She told him that in his final month, he would take an exam at a secret spot and should arrive early. All right, stick with me. We are about to see a master send her student away just to walk into a total death trap. He took it as her kicking him out of the village for good. Sarah, though, said he was just being dramatic. Gray then mentioned discovering an ogre nest right near the village outskirts. He pointed out the lack of guards, and Sarah confirmed that the ogre nests were indeed real. However, she stated that it did not directly affect them as help would come from the royal capital. She instructed Gray to go to the exam without any worries. Gray soon realized she was lying, no help was coming. He knew that in the past, his master lost her life right before the village was destroyed. In the future, people would say she was massacred while trying to face an ogre all by herself. Gray thanked Master Sarah and said he was heading out. She told him she would be praying for his success. That very same night, Sarah headed straight for the ogre nest hidden deep in the forest. Now pay attention, because Gray is not about to sit back and let history repeat itself in the worst way. The master was shocked to see Gray in the tree, demanding to know why he was not on his way to the academy. He asked why she lied about the royal army coming to wipe out the ogres. Sarah lied again, claiming the army hit an emergency, which was why she had to handle this alone. Regardless, she insisted on going solo, since she already knew the strength of the nest from the reports. She knew the chief was an elite ogre leading 45 monsters. Even with the odds stacked against her, she insisted she could take the whole nest down alone. Gray knew that, on its own, an elite ogre was not actually that powerful. However, their true strength came from their intelligence and leadership. Gray knew fighting them alone was suicide because she would just be surrounded. He realized that if he left his master and the village behind now, she would be completely destroyed. After all, he had already seen this dark future happen once. Because of that, he insisted on joining the mission. Still stubborn, Sarah maintained that she would deal with the nest by herself. But Gray refused to miss out on real combat experience, and promised her that he would not be a burden. Sarah could no longer beat him in their training matches, so he clearly would not be a hindrance in battle. However, nobody knew what could happen against a brand new nest. Since it was so dangerous, Sarah thought it was better for him to wait. Since she was being so stubborn about going alone, Gray had a plan. His idea was to fight Sarah until she passed out, then he would deal with the ogres himself. To prove his point, he leveled his sword at the dojo master herself. Faced with this, Sarah gave up the idea of going alone, but made him promise that no matter what happened, he would return alive. The hero lowered his blade and agreed, demanding in return that his master also make sure she stayed alive. You and I both know nothing good happens in a monster nest at night. Let us see how this goes. The terrain had absolutely no escape routes, which gave the ogres the confidence to set up their camp there. They knew they could not run, and fighting smart monsters required extreme caution. They did not see the chief, who was likely in the main tent. They decided to thin out the pack before the chief had a chance to emerge. The master told Gray to clear one side of the camp while she took a different path to hunt the others. With weapons drawn, the two charged the ogres at high speed. The monsters barely noticed the attack before they were being cut down. Many were killed before they could even react, until a pack of furious ogres finally managed to charge back. The hero pulled his sword back and unleashed a spinning slash, taking out several enemies in one go. One ogre tried to swing an axe at him, but Gray gutted it instantly. Meanwhile, the master swordswoman also eliminated several ogres without taking a single hit. Gray and Sarah cleared all the common monsters nearby. Sarah asked if this was really his first real fight, but he just told her to stay on guard. Gray felt something was off. These monsters were way too weak. He knew his master could solo them easily, unless there was something truly terrifying in that main tent. As he looked at the tent and saw those horrifying red eyes, Gray panicked, ordering his master to leave the area immediately. Terrified, he screamed for them to get out of there right now. The two of them began to sprint away at full speed. And that is where we leave it. The chief is out. And trust me, you and I are not ready for this. Stick with me. Gray points back and reveals he is not the boss. The real monster is right behind him. That true chief, a massive elite ogre, lets out a bone-shattering roar. It echoes through the cave, sending the other ogres into a murderous rage. This wasn't just an elite monster. Gray realizes they are facing an ogre general, the absolute powerhouse and true king of this entire nest. Even the master swordswoman knows. An ogre general is not something they can just take on alone. The plan is simple. Kill the elite and run. Sarah blocks a heavy axe swing from the monster with her own blade. She slices right across the ogre's chest. But wait, the wound starts knitting back together almost instantly. Gray explains that the general's roar acts as a massive buff, boosting his allies' strength and healing. That is why these monsters feel totally unstoppable. Even the low-tier orcs are turning into absolute tanks that are not easy to kill. Gray leaves his back to the master swordswoman. He tells her to just buy some time while he handles the heavy lifting. There is only one way out, taking that ogre general's head. Gray charges forward, diving straight into a brutal face-to-face clash with the king. It is a nightmare trying to track the ones flanking him from behind. But right as he turns, he is forced to dodge a sneak attack from an orc lunging at his back. Now watch this part closely. He is trying to clear the path, but suddenly snap. His sword shatters against the hide of the ogre. Another strike comes flying in. He barely blocks it with the hilt of his broken sword. This beast is not stupid. It sees exactly what Gray is planning and ramps up the brutality. That high intelligence is the real deal. He grabs a fresh blade to block the incoming axes. Seeing him struggle, his master tosses him another sword so he can dual wield. But even with two blades, the sheer number of enemies is starting to feel overwhelming. He is fighting an ogre general and a small army. Then, that roar echoes again, making the monsters even faster and more dangerous. He crosses his blades to hold back another barrage of heavy swings. Gray uses every bit of strength to shove the axe back. He clears a gap and charges straight into the monster horde. He cuts through them in a straight line, but takes a nasty hit to his shoulder in the process. No time to breathe. Gray is getting pelted with hits. As he tries to push forward, an ogre grabs him by the waist, pinning him down for a killing blow. The strike lands perfectly, slamming right into Gray's shoulder. These monsters are systematically destroying his weapons and pinning him down with sheer, brutal force. Suddenly, an enraged monster throws a massive haymaker at Gray's face. He blocks with his sword, but the blade completely shatters under the pressure. The force sends Gray flying back. Between the impact and his previous wounds, he is in really bad shape. He hits the dirt with another broken weapon by his side. Now, He is down to just one single sword against this entire horde. It is just him, one blade, and an army of monsters led by an ogre general. Even with his memories from before the regression, Gray knows this is a battle he simply cannot win. He shouts at his master to run while he is the target, but she just laughs, apologizes, and tells him that is not happening. Gray begs her not to throw her life away here, but she is not listening to his warnings. She explains it is not about bravery, her leg is shredded. Running is not even an option anymore. With her leg injured, they are backed into a corner. Gray came back in time to stop the Liquidator, not die here. You and I can see it total disaster. His last sword snaps, and for a second, hope vanishes. He refuses to let it end like this. If he taps into the power of the Black Swordsman, he might actually win. With that power, these monsters would be nothing. He closes his eyes and tries to channel the same energy from his fight with the Liquidator. He focuses deep on that feeling, eyes locked onto the jagged remains of his broken sword. When his eyes snap open, shadows swirl around him. He swings that broken hilt and unleashes a massive magical slash. That single shadowy strike is enough to wipe out a whole line of ogres instantly. The master did not even see the move, but she definitely noticed the pile of monster corpses Gray just made. Gray smiles as the shadows take over, telling her it is okay. He deletes several orcs at once, leaving the ogre general terrified. He launches one final shadow slash, deleting the general too. Meanwhile, the master blocks one last axe swing. She shouts about how much trouble that beast was and hacks it into a dozen tiny pieces. Without the general's buff, the remaining monsters are easy prey. Gray officially crushed the boss, using his Black Swordsman form. And that is where we leave it. Gray saved her life, and honestly, she does not care about the broken sword. Wild, right? Alright, stick with me as we see if Gray can survive his own devastating power. As he slips into unconsciousness, she desperately screams for him to wake up. Gray eventually opens his eyes in a dark, alien place, facing a door locked with heavy chains. Swirling black and red energy appears the same terrifying force he just unleashed. He wonders if that door holds the power he needs, but feels a monstrous presence behind him. Something tells him that if he opens that door now, he is a dead man. This mysterious entity tells him he made the right call by keeping it shut for now. Gray bolts awake in a bed, terrified, as his master explains he was out for 5 days. She feared he would never wake up since his body completely collapsed from the strain. Defeating an entire army of orcs? She admits his actions were beyond any normal logic. She asks if his body feels alright or if he can even move. Gray tries to move, but his right arm is a trembling mess that can't hold a sword. Worse, a dark, shadow-like bruise has stained his entire forearm. Hoping she cannot see it, he simply says he has no strength left in his arm. Sarah explains every bone in his arm was shattered, though he was too numb to feel it. She tells him they used a rare magic potion to save the limb. Gray is shocked because potions are expensive, but the village chief provided it for free. He wonders why the chief would give something so valuable to someone like him. Trust me, things just got real because the chief just named Gray the village hero. He enters the room to thank Gray personally for his legendary act of courage. That ogre general was a monster that would have erased the village from the map. The chief admits that without Gray, there would be nothing left of their home. The potion was just a small token of gratitude for the Hermegan every citizen's life. Gray thinks he is being dramatic, but the chief assures him it is the literal truth. Gray knows he is right, because in his previous life before the regression, the village was destroyed. The chief then mentions the academy exam Gray is desperate to take. Only 2 days remain, and the World Union Academy is a 3-day walk away. A horse could get him there in a day, but he has no money. He works up the nerve to ask the chief to lend him a horse. The chief already prepared the best stallion, knowing Gray would need to leave immediately to make it. Outside, the entire village has gathered with signs to wish their hero good luck. They cheer for him, expressing their hope that he will conquer the upcoming exam. They even hand him a pouch of money they all chipped in to collect. You saw that too, right? Gray just vowed never to return if he fails this test. Sarah reminds him that no other candidate has ever defeated a high-tier ogre general. However, the condition of his right arm still fills him with dread. Sarah tells him his left is enough, and warns him to avoid that shadow power. Gray still fears the academy examiners will require him to use both his hands. Sarah is certain they will see his genius, and Gray looks at the standing village. The town is safe, history has changed. This world is not the one he remember. Hope fills his heart, he can actually create a brand new future. He sets off on the stallion and reaches the city in record time for the exam. Finally, the World Union Academy looms before him like a massive, legendary castle. As he enters the gates, they begin handing out the official exam tickets. And trust me, you and I are about to find out if he passes. Alright, you and I are diving into a world where Gray faces hundreds of candidates, hearing rumors that only 20 lucky souls will pass this year's brutal entrance exam. Last time, 50 people made it in, but there was even a year where only a single candidate was strong enough to pass the test. Then, the speakers announce the arrival of Professor Ariel. She starts handing out exam tickets, instructing every candidate to grab the paper in front of them and slide their fingers across to trigger their magic. Gray picks up his ticket, officially becoming candidate number 513 for the fencing course. To everyone's shock, the paper is blank, except for the assigned number and the specific testing course the person is taking. The World Union Academy has a strict rule: they don't care about your age, gender, or social status. Names are irrelevant here. To the Academy, those details don't matter until you actually prove you have what it takes to succeed. Only the winners who earn the right to cross the bridge get to finally reveal their true names to the world. Candidates can even use fake names, which didn't bother Gray, even though he'd accidentally left his own sword back at the inn. Gray was officially set for the fencing course. Professor Ariel assigned courses based purely on looks, asking anyone in the wrong spot to raise their hands, leaving the entire crowd totally and completely speechless. Everyone wondered if they'd been watched, or if she was using some kind of high-level mind-reading magic. The professor confirms no one is out of place before dropping the hammer on the official exam schedule. Gray's big moment is set for 11 a.m. on the very first day. He's not exactly thrilled about starting on day one since his arm still needs healing, but it's a practical exam, and any delay results in instant disqualification for everyone. There's no changing the time, and to make matters worse, his right arm has absolutely zero strength left in it. He's desperately praying for a miracle recovery by tomorrow morning. Morning comes, and the arm is still dead weight, but he decides to push through the pain regardless. A servant points him toward the arena entrance, telling him he's the very next candidate up to fight. Now, pay attention here. Gray's left arm is fine, but his right is barely moving as he watches the examiner carefully to find a single opening. Suddenly, a massive brute charges the bespectacled swordsman like a raging bull, swinging a heavy, devastating blow. But the examiner just slips away, letting the brute's massive blade slam uselessly into the dirt. The brute roars that he's not done yet, ripping his sword from the ground for another desperate strike. He lunges forward, but the examiner effortlessly catches the massive weapon with his own thin, slender blade. The brute can't believe his eyes. His giant sword couldn't even chip the examiner's steel. In a flash, the examiner's sheer power breaks the brute's guard, sending his heavy sword flying into the air and slamming him onto the ground. It's over. The brute grabs his gear and leaves, while Gray watches, feeling like he's already lost this entire fight. Then, the bespectacled examiner looks up and calls out candidate number 513 to enter the arena. I know what you're thinking. Gray has to face a guy who just crushed a giant using only one arm. It looks totally and completely hopeless. The examiner offers Gray the opening strike. Even though it feels like a losing battle, he's determined to give it everything he's got. He charges forward recklessly. Gray remembers his master's voice: don't just swing with your arms, but channel the force of your entire body into every single strike, despite his injury. He shifts the weight to his other muscles, delivering a lightning-fast cut that the examiner barely manages to dodge. But fighting like this isn't easy. Without his full strength, every swing feels way harder than it did during his training sessions. As Gray prepares a left-handed strike, the examiner lunges, trying to exploit the obvious opening in his defense. To Gray's surprise, the instructor's blade looks slow. He predicts the path and blocks the strike with total ease. The guy has power, sure, but his speed is nothing compared to what Gray's master could do. He puts all his faith into the swordsmanship she taught him. Gray realizes he can make up for his weak arm with speed, attacking from the front before blurring forward at an insane and rapid pace. He sees the examiner lagging behind, his face finally starting to show real shock. He totally overestimated the man. He wasn't nearly as strong as he looked, and his master's words echoed in his head he was going to win. Their blades clash, and Gray deflects the examiner's arm upward. Now, he's actually feeling confident about taking the win. He's read the examiner's style, but the raw power gap is still huge, making it impossible to break his stance. And trust me, you and I know winning with one hand is never easy. Alright, stick with me because Gray just spotted a massive opening as his examiner's movements finally start falling apart. He stays perfectly still, waiting for the instructor to commit to an attack. When a heavy overhead strike comes down, Gray slips to the side, exposing a clear path to the man's back. That large, predictable swing left the instructor completely wide open for a counter. Power levels don't matter now. Gray has claimed his opponent's back and is ready to unleash a finishing blow. But just as Gray prepares his final strike, the entire duel is cut short. It's too early for Gray, but the proctor announces the exam time limit has officially expired. Because of the clock, the match is a draw. Gray is devastated that his trap never landed. Looking at his feet, he knows he gave it his all. But without a victory, admission looks grim. He resolves to heal his arm and return for the exam next year. Gray looks at the Grand Coliseum one last time and whispers his thanks. Now, pay attention here, because a secret meeting at the World Union Academy is about to decide his fate. The board members agree that their joint observation method was efficient. However, one member warns that they cannot ignore talent just to speed up the process. The old man snaps back. He wants thoughts on the students, not their testing system. Starting with the Swordsman, they check who passed. Every winner is approved. 3 other standouts are being evaluated based on the quality of their performance. They argue that average students would just struggle, so the focus remains only on the most prominent candidates. The sword course list is finally confirmed, but then a professor stops everyone to ask about candidate 513. Professor Ariel, with her striking red hair, inquires about him. The evaluators pull up the protagonist's footage and start smiling. They were sure he'd win, but using traps against an instructor raises serious admission doubts. They admit he has the technique, but they claim he lacks raw strength and was outmatched the whole time, so they discard his application. Trust me, you and I can see these judges are missing something massive here. The next morning, all candidates gather at the tower. Gray clutches his form, waiting as the names of the approved swordsmen are finally read. 6 people made it. 5 names are called, and none of them are Gray. The final list is finished, and our protagonist is not among the winners. The approved students cross the bridge to finish their enrollment before sunset. Meanwhile, the application forms of those who failed begin to burn. Gray realizes he really didn't make the cut, but then the speaker shouts a final name. Divine Eye, special admission goes to Gray. Suddenly, the form in his hands erupts in blue flames. He is approved through the Divine Eye, a category he's never heard of before. Jealous commoners whisper that the academy is getting weak and accepting trash. Gray has no allies here, wondering if his master helped him from the shadows. An old man barks at them to show respect, as the Divine Eye has trained heroes for a century. It's a rank held by elites like Amy White, Bella Albright, Leek Mueller, and even the future hero legend, Jacob Bloomfield. The other candidates consider these powerful swordsmen to be complete failures. You and I just saw history change, because Gray's name will now stand alongside the greatest legends in the world. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Everyone needs to change and gather in the square. Gray steps out in his new uniform, sporting the academy's insignia. Upon arriving at the building, the students wonder if they're in the right spot. A man explains a slight delay and asks them to step back as he positions the stairs. You and I are about to see how insane the magic here really is. The stone structure begins shattering as a blinding, intense light erupts from within. Students watch in total shock at the massive mana output as the entire main building suddenly materializes before their eyes. As the instructors rise from the earth, they casually tell everyone to just grab a seat anywhere. Everyone gathers around, finally realizing that top-tier teleportation magic just moved a whole massive building. Our main character realizes they wanted the ceremony held somewhere with a perfect view. This is the sheer scale of the World Union Academy. They can literally warp an entire fortress with a single high-level spell. 600 candidates for only 30 spots? Talk about steep odds. He admits he spent more time swinging swords than hitting books. His friend used to doubt his brains, but she explains this academy only hunts for the absolute best elites across the globe. Right then, now pay attention, dragons, balloons, and students from every corner of the world descend as the massive magical airship Strat Queen arrives. He actually boarded that beast once before during his time with the Liquidator subjugation squads. Word is, it is the biggest airship on the planet, deployed today just for this special opening ceremony. This really hammers home the insane power and resources this academy actually has. Students from other schools pour in, and the man in glasses finally kicks off the big ceremony. After a long, boring speech from the director, our main character starts feeling sleepy. Even at this elite school, ceremonies are still a drag. Once the top students from every department finish their formal greetings, the main event starts. The director calls Leonhard, the #1 student in swordsmanship, to the stage. Whispers fill the room about how he supposedly crushed the examiner during the entrance exams. People say his legendary sword skills rival the professor's. His name is Leonhard Apis. He asks if he can speak his mind freely, and after getting the green light, he prepares a major statement. Leonhard addresses the crowd, noting that while not everyone got in through the usual channels, it is an honor to serve together, but working as a team is vital for their future global contributions. He looks forward to seeing what great heights these prestigious students can reach together. But Leonhard declares that among them stands someone who absolutely does not deserve to be here. He calls out Professor Ariel for using the Divine Eye to admit our main character. But Ariel fires back, insisting every single student survived a brutal exam. She adds that even if Leonhard disagrees, excluding students is a terrible way to start. Leonhard snaps back that he is not talking about those who actually passed the normal exams. No, I know what you're thinking, he is targeting the guy Ariel special invited. That one student who got in through the Divine Eye special admission. He demands that student steps forward, hands over their uniform, and leaves the school right now. Our main character has no clue why this guy is so salty. He is just glad Leonhard does not recognize his face and keeps his mouth shut. Professor Ariel just smirks, commenting on how lively the students are this year. Dead serious, Leonhard insists they put a stop to these irregular admissions. Ariel gets in his face with a sinister vibe, whispering that he is not even stronger than the main character. Leonhard is totally frozen. She actually likes his guts and proposes a massive bet, risking her own job and our hero's admission. Leonhard asks if she wants him to just fight the special admission kid. Ariel says no way, because if the protagonist goes all out, Leonhard would end up in a body bag. As a teacher, she cannot risk a student's life like that. But this rejection absolutely fuels Leonhard's growing rage. But she is dead serious this bet is going to involve monsters instead. She knows Leonhard is better at slaying beasts than people. The deal is simple. Hunt down the specific monster she chooses as a target. Every round gets harder. Whoever fails to kill their monster first loses the whole thing. If our special student loses, Ariel has to resign from her position as professor forever. Trust me, if Leonhard loses, he will be completely at her mercy. Alright, you and I are about to dive into a high-stakes gamble where lives and careers are on the line. Ariel immediately pivots to a new proposal. The first target? An ogre general. As soon as that name drops, Leonhard slams his hand down in pure outrage. He shouts that facing such a beast alone is suicide. Professor Ariel clarifies the mission. She wants him to kill it, but she gives him a 1-year deadline. Leonhard snaps back. If training for only 1 year made killing an ogre general possible, humanity wouldn't be suffering and dying like this. He demands she pick a different target for the exam, insisting that if a monster like that were so easy to defeat after a year, the world wouldn't be facing such a crisis. Professor Ariel presents a final condition. In a tie, Leonhard wins. But if he fails, she gets fired, and the special admission student gets expelled. When asked for his thoughts, Leonhard calls the whole thing absolute madness. Professor Ariel knows he has 0 options and forces him to accept the bet. But Leonhard laughs it off. He says an ogre general is an easy warm-up and signs the contract. He grabs the pen and signs the magical document without a second thought. Then he looks at the professor and asks if the kid can actually win. Now pay attention here, because even the other students realize how insane this bet is. Some whisper that she is past her prime, weak, and looking for an excuse to leave the academy forever. Gray isn't exactly thrilled about this deal. He figures the professor only set that 1-year deadline specifically because of him. He suspects she had been spying on him long before he even enrolled. He's shocked by how calculated her demands are from the start. It's clear his professor is playing incredibly dirty with these insane conditions. After some time passes, the Magic Fundamentals class begins. The professor assumes the students are stunned to be getting a real lecture on their very first day. However, he makes it clear. In this academy, not a single day will be wasted, starting with the basics of magic. He explains that an invisible energy called ether lives inside every human body. By moving ether through the body's magical circuits, anyone can cast spells. The professor worries this lecture might be a waste of time if the students are already masters. With the theory finished, Gray realizes his biggest problem is being stuck in the same class as Leonhard. He desperately hopes Leonhard never finds out that he is the special student known as the Divine Eye. Suddenly, the professor calls him out. He notices Gray is distracted and losing focus on the lesson. Gray panics and apologizes. He can't believe the professor spotted him all the way in the back row. The professor shouts that if they are so confident, they should step up and show their power. He is certain that every student here has already mastered the basics of magic. Even in the swordsmanship course, using magic is a skill they cannot afford to ignore. He emphasizes that even a swordsman must know the basics to coordinate with their mages on the field. Gray realizes the explanation is identical to what he heard back at the training camp. He figures the practice magic will be the same too. Is he about to learn the ether projectile? The professor notices Gray's familiar look and asks if he already knows how to use magic. Gray confirms he learned it at camp. Seizing the moment, the professor turns the demo into a real duel. Leonhard also knows the ether projectile, so the professor orders the two of them to face off. Leonhard scoffs. He tells them he was trained in magic before he ever set foot here. The professor explains that despite the power gap, an ether projectile won't be lethal to either of them. Can you believe it? The professor just outed his secret identity as the Divine Eye in front of the whole class. Gray is furious. The professor just blew his cover and exposed his secret to everyone. He stands up, ready to show his magic. Meanwhile, Leonhard decides to show him how the academy really works. The professor commands the special student, Gray, to come down and take his position. On his signal, they will both fire. Gray is shaking. He only practiced this for a few days in a war zone. He is terrified that he won't make it out of this fight in one piece. And that's where we leave it for now, trust me. You and I are about to see exactly who survives this insane power clash. Let's dive in as Gray unleashes his own ether magic to strike back. Both spells fire at once, colliding in midair. But Gray's magic overpowers his rival's sphere, screaming toward a terrified Leonhard, who is left wide open, but the professor jumps in, throwing up a shield just in time. Even then, the barrier shatters, and the massive explosion rocks the room. Every student feels the raw shockwave, including a stunned Leon Hart. The professor rushes over to check for injuries. Leon Hart is okay, but the teacher knows that without that shield, the boy would be dead. The class is speechless. How did Gray pull off something that insane? Gray is actually confused. He thought his spell was weak. Was the ether projectile he learned in the subjugation squad something special? He even asks if the others could do the same. Now pay attention. The professor explains that Gray achieved this because his projectile is special. It's actually super compressed ether. Nobody in the room has even heard of that. It's a level of power most professors struggle with, yet Gray mastered it perfectly. The professor admits he's never seen such a lethal projectile. It's a feat no one else in the academy can even copy. Now, everyone starts agreeing that those divine eyes weren't wrong to accept him. Still, Gray feels like something is off. He tells them all the spells from the training fields were like this. He wonders if they're mocking him since anyone can do it with practice. The professor just chuckles and offers Gray a personal recommendation to transfer into the magic course. But Gray isn't interested and turns the offer down immediately. The professor is stunned. Gray achieved perfect ether compression at such a young age. He calls Gray an unparalleled prodigy, someone who stands far above the academy's normal standards. He declares that whoever called Gray talentless was a fool. The students are shocked to hear this strict professor give such high praise. To him, it would be a literal crime against magic if Gray didn't pursue these studies. That's when Gray remembers hearing about this compression technique before. Back in ancient times, the true nature of compressed ether, or life force, was a total mystery. His old teacher explained that compressing ether inside your own body before releasing it was incredibly difficult. In the future, people would actually look down on this technique as weak and useless. You saw that reaction, right? From the master's face, Gray realizes the world in this era still has zero knowledge of what OD is. This proves his squad training was actually knowledge from the future. He'll have to be very careful about who he shares this with. Gray sticks to his guns, declaring his love for swords and rejecting the magic course again. The professor, accepting the choice, tells Gray he's welcome to come by any time if he ever changes his mind. Back at his seat, the professor says he won't scold Gray for daydreaming anymore. This lecture is too basic, so Gray can leave whenever. The class can't believe it. Even Leon Hart starts looking at Gray with a completely different level of respect. Later on, Professor Ariel sends Gray a letter, summoning him to her office once class is over. Gray assumes he's in trouble for his fencing class performance and expects Ariel to push for a course change. But the moment he enters, a sword lunges at him. It's a surprise attack, but Gray's reflexes are sharp enough to block it easily. His body moves on instinct against a blue-haired girl. He recognizes her. He's definitely seen this girl somewhere before. Ariel smiles, her suspicions confirmed. Bella didn't hold back at all, and yet Gray's movements were absolutely flawless. Gray realizes his attacker is none other than Bella Albright, the sorceress. Ariel mocks the other professors, saying they should quit if they couldn't even tell that Bella was going for the kill. Defeated, the other professors admit their mistake and start handing over gold coins to Ariel. She explains they were all betting on whether Gray could survive Bella's sudden ambush. Since she won the bet, she tosses one of those gold coins to Gray. But the professors notice something. Gray didn't use his dominant arm, almost like he's hiding a serious injury. It might be worse than it looks. And trust me, Gray's just as stunned that she figured all that out just by watching him. Ariel makes it clear that you and I shouldn't be surprised these professors see everything at World Union Academy. She admits she has known about Gray's condition since day one, which was the real reason behind her making that mysterious bet. The faculty acknowledges his raw potential but drops a bombshell: heal the injury or leave the academy. The moment they are alone, Ariel shifts the vibe entirely. She is not here for small talk, she wants magic. Word got out that Gray managed to use compressed ether during Professor Carlos's latest lecture. Professor Carlos actually went straight to Ariel's office to beg for Gray's transfer to the magic course. But she refused, insisting that Gray is much better suited for a sword. She is absolutely certain there is more to his ether compression than simple talent. Since Ariel can read him like an open book, Gray decides honesty is his only move. Ariel is desperate to know his secret trick and promises to keep it quiet while offering a reward, revealing that her real motivation is helping a girl named Bella Albright. Gray nearly calls her a sorceress, which would have been a massive problem. Ariel explains that while Bella is a genius at theory, she has a complete block when it comes to compressing ether. Gray already knew Bella struggled with this, but now he realizes his super compressed ether method might be her only hope since it is totally unconventional. Turns out, there is a way to use that power without actually performing the physical compression. Now, watch this, because saving Bella means keeping her away from the terrifying Professor Varian Bradley. You cannot be a mage and not know that name. Varian Bradley is the magic world's worst nightmare. In the future, his twisted human experiments and horrific magical disasters are destined to cause the deaths of thousands of innocent people all across the land. He is the most dangerous magical criminal in history, and he is still walking free. Ariel warns that if Bella cannot master super compressed ether by the end of the school year, she will be handed over to Bradley for forced surgery. Gray is completely horrified. That surgery is just a sick cover story for Bradley to conduct more of his illegal human experiments on students. The public has no idea yet, but Ariel already knows the body count Bradley has left behind. Bella is terrified of the prospect, but she faces certain expulsion from the academy by the end of the year if she cannot master the use of super compressed ether. Professor Ariel would honestly rather see Bella leave the academy forever than see her body mutilated by such a procedure. This is forbidden knowledge that does not exist yet, making Gray terrified that revealing the truth will rewrite the entire course of history. He still remembers humanity's total annihilation. Gray decides he would rather shatter this entire timeline than let that hellish future repeat itself, so he takes the leap and finally decides to teach Bella Albright the truth about ether. They head to the arena, where Gray pours out everything he knows about magic. They sign a binding magical contract to ensure his secret techniques never leave that room. When Gray finishes his lesson, Ariel is absolutely floored by the sheer complexity and depth of the magical knowledge he has just revealed to them. Bella finds the entire explanation surprisingly concise and perfectly organized. It feels less like a simple lesson and more like a lecture from hundreds of years in the future, advancing the history of magic by an entire century. And yeah, I know what you are thinking. It is because Gray is using a lecture Bella herself gives 10 years from now, but he keeps that part to himself. There is so much raw data here that even Ariel cannot verify if it is all actually true. Bella, however, chooses to believe him. Nothing Gray said contradicts the fundamental laws of magic they already know. The only way to know for sure is to put it to the test right here and now. If Gray's future theory is correct, the spell will manifest exactly as he described. Bella raises her staff, channeling her inner power into the spell. Gray remembers the legends. Bella's full power is said to be capable of incinerating an entire city, and her control has always been dangerously unstable. A blinding light erupts from her staff, followed by a violent, earth-shaking explosion. The blast is so massive it makes Gray scream, as he is swallowed by a towering pillar of flames. The heat is suffocating. If Bella does not grab hold of this magic right now, Gray is a dead man. Flames lick up Gray's arm, but they stop just in time as Bella saves his life. Bella is thrilled to finally control her ether exactly how Gray taught her, laughing as a massive fire dragon begins to swirl out from her staff. But the strain is too much. Her ether hits zero, and she collapses to the floor. And trust me, you and I can see why Bella fainted. Her magic source is totally empty. You and I are jumping right back into the action where Professor Ariel is stunned by Bella's rapid magical progress. Even while unconscious, Bella mutters that it's the ether theory that is amazing, not her own talent. But here is the catch. That theory actually came from her own future self in a completely different timeline. Ariel realizes that since Bella can now handle super compressed ether, that dangerous surgery is no longer necessary. She is relieved they avoided Bradley's risky procedure, especially since Bella managed to keep her overwhelming magic under perfect control. The professor explains that while the surgery boosts power, it comes at the heavy price of losing all control. The details are top secret, but the procedure essentially shatters a person's natural limiter to force out more power. This exact surgery was why ancient sorceresses were known for their immense strength and their tragic lack of restraint. Thanks to Gray, Bella met her end of the deal. Now, it was finally Professor Ariel's turn to step up and fulfill her own side of the contract. To start, Ariel prepares to cast a healing spell on Gray's arm to mend that nasty magical wound. She activates her magic, and a swarm of glowing butterflies begins to drift toward Gray's damaged limb. Within moments, Gray's arm feels as good as new. He thanks Ariel, since even high-level healing potions couldn't fix this damage. Ariel tells him not to insult her nerve restoration magic by comparing it to some cheap, common potion. Now watch this part. She has him draw his blade to test the arm, and his movements look perfectly normal at first. He tests his speed with a few rapid strikes, but he can tell something still feels slightly off. Although his physical nerves are repaired, the magic simply cannot touch the deep scars left on Gray's soul. Ariel admits that modern magic hasn't technically proven souls exist yet, but she is a firm believer in them anyway. With her secret eye, she can actually see his soul mending itself naturally, provided he does not push his limits too hard right now. Gray considers taking a break from the sword to recover, but Ariel insists that he should keep training normally. She is dying to know what kind of sword style is capable of inflicting that kind of spiritual damage. She mentions a rare style that uses the soul to guide the blade, then asks if Gray knows a girl named Amy White. You and I know she is the future sword saint, but right now, she is a total nobody. Still, Gray's style looks just like hers. There is one tiny difference though. The person who trained Gray is actually even more skilled than Amy herself. Gray realizes that in the future, Amy will eventually reach that same legendary level of mastery as his teacher. He plays it cool, claiming he learned everything at a simple dojo in his hometown. Quickly changing the subject, he asks if it is really possible for a soul to be harmed just by swinging a sword. Ariel says normal swordplay could never do that. Then she asks if he actually used that mysterious power hidden deep inside him. Gray realizes her shining eye sees everything. She can literally see his raw power leaking through that mysterious chain door. He flashes back to the chain door he encountered once before. He knows Ariel isn't guessing. There is no way she could know about that manifestation without seeing it herself. Ariel reveals she has seen an aura like his before, prompting Gray to ask if other mages possess this power. She confirms it, though she is not sure if they are even human. She calls these mysterious beings the Liquidators. Seeing his shocked face, she knows he recognizes the name. Gray never expected anyone to mention Liquidators this early on. Ariel is equally surprised that a mere student like him already knows about such a classified concept. She figures it out. He clearly brought knowledge from the future. Gray realizes he knows things that absolutely no one else in this era should know. She asks him exactly how much he knows about these Liquidators. Gray explains that they are an extreme threat to all of humanity. They must be stopped and destroyed at any cost before they manifest. Ariel agrees they are dangerous, then drops a bombshell. Bradley is hell-bent on moving forward with his experiments. Gray demands to know Bradley's connection to the Liquidators. She explains that Bradley is literally trying to summon a Liquidator. Gray is floored because he never once suspected humans were responsible for creating them. In his previous timeline, the Academy always seemed to know exactly where a Liquidator would show up. Now the truth hits him. The Academy has been behind these Liquidator summons since the very beginning. Gray wants to shut down this insane experiment immediately. Ariel explains that because a professor of her own rank is involved, she doesn't have the authority to stop it. And that's where we leave it. Gray asks which superiors she tried to warn about stopping the experiment. Alright, you and I are diving into these Academy secrets. Ariel cannot reveal her superiors without an order, and nobody can stop this experiment. Gray realizes that reaching the Academy's top leaders is going to be way harder than he ever imagined. But things have to change now that he knows Bradley is nothing but a criminal. In his past life, that psycho professor's experiments killed dozens of women, and Gray knows the exact location of his lab. He knows exactly where Bradley is hiding, and tells Ariel they need to catch the man red-handed. The professor warns him it is not that simple, since breaking into a research room is still a crime. Without hard evidence, they would both just get arrested, so she asks Gray if he has any proof. If not, they have to drop the idea. Even knowing Bradley is a monster, their hands are completely tied. Then the professor switches gears to Gray's power, and asks if he actually wants to learn how to control it. She mentions a highly skilled professor at the Academy named Heathcote Longfellow, who specializes in these unknown forces. Gray instantly recognizes the name Heathcote is the legendary man who trained the Sword Saint herself. Ariel promises to set up private lessons with him, starting as soon as the very next morning. Mastery was the whole reason he came here, and Gray is stunned he found a lead this quickly. Now pay attention, Gray starts his training the next day by just running, and he is seriously wondering if this is what a master's lesson looks like. As they sprint through the dense forest, the professor notices Gray's mind is wandering all over the place. He tells him to stop thinking and pick up the pace, running until his body hits its absolute limit. Only after he burns through every bit of his physical energy will his soul finally begin to awaken. Longfellow makes it clear, as long as Gray has strength left, they are not even touching a sword. But while his legs are burning, Gray cannot stop thinking about the sick experiments Bradley is conducting. He wonders if he should be doing this while a criminal is loose. But a week later, Ariel checks his progress. Gray explains that they have only done running, with just a tiny bit of sword work at the end. When Gray says he feels stronger anyway, Ariel just comments that this is exactly how Longfellow trains people. Suddenly, a butler interrupts with a letter for Ariel, and her face turns grim the moment she reads it. It is a report claiming that Bella Albright has successfully produced something called super-compressed ether. But the report clarifies that even though Bella gained a similar power, it is not the real deal. After further testing, they realized she did not actually compress it, so her ability will not be officially recognized. Bradley states in the letter that the contract is still valid and the operation will go on as planned. To Gray, reading Bradley's letter feels like looking at the words of a man who has gone completely insane. Professor Ariel realizes that Bradley is determined to force Bella into undergoing that dangerous surgery. The contract is completely airtight, making it almost impossible for the poor girl to refuse the procedure. The only way to change this is if Bradley cancels the contract himself, or if Bella gets expelled so the operation is officially stopped for good. Ariel finally asks Gray for his help to finish this mission. She demands the lab's location to expose him as a criminal, but Gray just scoffs, reminding her about her own warning regarding the danger of going there without any proof. But check this out, Ariel is putting all her faith in Gray to find proof against Bradley. She assumes she made that choice from the very start by deciding to trust him. After all, her divine eye confirmed that Gray was telling the absolute truth the entire time. Ariel tells Gray to lead the way so they can finally bring Bradley's twisted crimes into the light together. Gray mentions the lab is near Torwell Village, which Ariel remembers as an authorized Academy research site. Gray realizes Bradley was hiding his illegal work in a place that was, ironically, officially sanctioned. Ariel points out that there is no better place for illegal experiments than right under everyone's noses. No one would ever suspect him since Bradley spends almost all of his time working there anyway. Besides, Academy rules mean no professor ever interferes with what goes on in another person's laboratory. Ariel concludes that as long as they find hard evidence of his crimes, they will not be accused of invading. Suddenly, Bella Albright knocks and enters, telling Ariel that she just received a letter from Bradley as well. Ariel grabs that letter, and trust me, you and I are going to love seeing her handle this. Stick with me as Bella asks if Ariel is confronting Bailey Bradley just for her. Professor Ariel simply replies that she can handle this mess on her own. Gray steps in to help since it is her fight too, and Bella Albright also joins the cause. Ariel admits her fear that this insane professor might snatch one of them for his sick human experiments, especially since Bailey Bradley's true power is a total mystery. Gray counters that this is exactly why Ariel should never face him alone. The main character, Gray, says he will use the same power that crushed General Ogro to back her up. Bella, the special admission student, adds her voice, demanding they be allowed to choose their own path. Professor Ariel realizes that even if she tries to stop them, Gray and Bella will go anyway. Fine, she will let them join, but only on one strict condition. Don't blink here. Ariel warns them to prioritize their own safety as they finally track down that sick professor's hidden mountain laboratory. Bella can't wrap her head around the fact that illegal experiments are happening right here. Professor Ariel is dead certain they're going in right now to find the proof. Gray nods, knowing that this is definitely the place. Trusting her team, Bella asks if they can actually pull this off without any hitches. Ariel explains that Bailey Bradley is supposedly at a magic conference right now. Since the main entrance is likely rigged with deadly traps, they have to slip in through the side. Breaking into an Academy-sanctioned lab is a crime, but they have no other choice. Ariel gives Bella one last chance to turn back if she is feeling uneasy. Bella doesn't blink. Ariel then tells her she's wrong to think they're doing all this just for her benefit. Gray adds that stopping these horrific experiments is about protecting the entire world. If they don't stop this, thousands could suffer. Ariel thinks that's a bit dramatic, but agrees he has to be stopped. Risking their lives isn't just about Bella, it is about justice. They charge forward at lightning speed, launching spells directly at the laboratory walls. A massive explosion rips through the lab doors to clear the traps. They blast a hole in the wall and find a scene that's absolutely gut-wrenching. Several people are locked in cells, looking visibly starved and broken. Ariel realizes they won't even have to look hard for proof of his crimes. Just a quick scan reveals at least 14 forbidden spells in use here, which alone is enough to put him away for life. Plus, those illegal human experiments are his biggest sin. In the center of the hall, they find a ritual altar surrounded by candles and dark symbols. They plan to grab the evidence and go, while debating if they should free the prisoners immediately. The hero warns they can't wait, because Bailey Bradley could return at any second. Now watch Bailey Bradley steps from the shadows right then, catching them totally off guard. Ariel asks about the conference, but Bradley laughs it off, saying he sent a clone so he could focus on his crucial work in this lab. He has just managed to secure fresh materials for the ritual. He planned to use his victims while they were still fresh, but seeing 3 intruders in his secret lab has changed his priorities. He was already looking for test subjects with higher magical potential than commoners. He's confused how they found him, but he's certain no one else knows they're here. If they all vanished right now, nobody would ever suspect the good professor. He plans to turn the group into test subjects to advance the limits of magic. Since he can't let them walk out alive, he'll ensure their deaths aren't a waste. Suddenly, a massive burst of magic strikes him. Bella blasts him with her staff, but Bradley just shields himself, actually impressed by the power. He admits Ariel's divine eye is still sharp, and notes that this special admission student has some seriously impressive talent. He is definitely going to keep a closer eye on these recruits. He is not bothered by the attack, but rather by the fact that a student would try to kill her teacher. She has lost her chance to end it. Ariel orders an immediate retreat since they already have the evidence, and the Academy can take it from here. Bradley isn't letting them go. He starts gathering a massive amount of dark magic. Bradley fires dark magic, and Ariel blocks. We have to see what's next. All right, you and I are jumping into the fire as Bella Albright barely dodges a lethal blow. The twins brag that this devouring flame is their ultimate research project. It generates a blaze that literally eats defensive spells, using them as fuel to grow even more terrifyingly powerful. Even though it needs a super rare material to summon, the brothers claim this magic is completely invincible. Professor Ariel is doing her best to hold the line, but it is not looking good. A crack forms in her barrier, and that hungry fire starts leaking through. Realizing the danger, Ariel tells Bella to take the spell memory bag to Gray. She knows Heathcote will realize exactly what to do with it. As the shield nearly shatters, Bella adds her own defensive magic. Professor Ariel screams at Bella to leave and stop trying to help. Seeing the barrier fail, Bella tells her teacher to leave the rest to her. Ariel remembers their promise to prioritize their lives above all else. She notes that the twins' magic is completely abnormal. Standard defensive spells just won't cut it against a force like this. Suddenly, Ariel's barrier completely explodes. She tells the others to run while she buys them a few more precious seconds. Bella Albright steps up with a new spell and says everything is fine. She figured out his magic was actually pretty weak if she used the right counter. No wait, the theory behind stopping the devouring flame was supposed to be a total secret known only to the twins. Here is the twist. Bella says she recently learned a new theory. Bradley loses it, demanding to know the name of the traitor who taught her that spell as pure hatred takes over. He promises to kill her quickly if she talks, but Bella just gives a solemn look and says it is a secret. She does mention the traitor is just a student in the fencing course, thinking back to the lessons the protagonist personally set up for her. Realizing she won't talk, Bradley pulls out a crystal and snarls that he is going to burn every single one of them alive. The moment he crushes the crystal, tormented souls start swarming out, surging toward our group of heroes. These souls are hungry, looking to devour them and transform into living, breathing flames. You and I are watching them merge into a giant monster of black fire. Gray asks if Bella is okay, and she says the barrier will hold for now, but her mana is dangerously close to zero. Since she is stuck holding the defense, Bella begs the hero to go on the offensive and take out the twins once and for all. Professor Ariel uses her divine eye to find a weak point in the fire, deciding to project her magic outside the shield. She channels her power right through Bella's barrier, aiming a blast directly at the weak spot in Bradley's attack. Powerful bolts of electricity blast toward the villain. Bradley sees Ariel's counter coming, but the lightning cannot even reach him. Gray remembers that Ariel's attack magic is actually the weakest on staff. The twins' fire must be absorbing her spells to get even stronger. Bella Albright is completely tapped out, her body stumbling as her mana finally hits empty. This is exactly why Ariel, with her divine eye, was so desperate for them to run away earlier. Gray says this is better than them all dying. He admits he wanted this fight and does not blame Ariel at all. Ariel warns him not to use that forbidden power yet, or the damage to his body could be permanent. Hearing that, the protagonist gulps hard and nods, promising he understands the risk. Bella Albright says she does not feel any ether. She knows this power is way too massive to be explained by simple magic alone. Ariel wants her to stop digging and promises she won't speak a single word about what she just saw. The professor warns that if Bella won't promise to stay silent, she will have to wipe her memories right then and there. Bella agrees immediately and asks if they should draw up another magical contract to make it official. Professor Ariel agrees, and a glowing contract appears between them for both to sign. Still worried about those twisted experiments, the protagonist says they need to focus on helping the victims. He realizes the victims were just put to sleep. They are not in immediate danger, but they need to get to the Academy's medical bay. So, Ariel creates several glowing magic cocoons to keep them safe from any outside threats. Once resolved, they decide to investigate the mountain lab even further. From what they can see, the illegal experiments happening here involved horrifying human sacrifices. These poor souls were used as catalysts to boost magic or force human evolution beyond its limits. Ariel finds no trace of the Liquidator here, wondering if it is hidden elsewhere. Gray finds it strange since this was the site of an incident that killed tens of thousands. And we are left wondering, how did a simple catalyst project trigger such a massive catastrophe? Alright, you and I are about to dive into a massive secret that completely changes everything for Gray. He froze as the truth hit, while the girls noticed the dread on his face. The main character realized something was definitely beneath that lab, telling the girls that hidden passages must exist underground. No secret doors turned up, but Professor Ariel spotted something through her divine eye. Activating her ocular skill, Ariel detected the faint traces of short-distance teleportation magic. She deduced a hidden space sat 300 meters underground, accessible only by warping. Gray asked if they could reach it, and Ariel promised to open a teleportation portal herself. They braced themselves as Ariel triggered the complex, short-distance teleportation magic circle. Ariel warned they might hit solid ground, but suddenly, a massive portal revealed strange structures. None of them imagined such a colossal space could exist beneath the entire facility. Ariel felt waves of ether crashing from every direction until she spotted a massive central structure. Pay attention here, this structure doesn't just leak ether. It pumps out power different from magic, which the main character instantly recognized as the Liquidator's terrifying energy. Tense and on guard, the trio approached the ominous, large, central structure. Inside, they found a door marked with a bizarre symbol, surrounded by a ritual pentagram and candles. However, there was no sign of the Liquidator, so Professor Ariel decided to knock on the door. Bella Albright worried if it was safe, but Professor Ariel told her to just relax. Ariel pushed the door open, claiming it was just a ritual symbol with no active power. She explained that the real energy wasn't in the door itself, but the surrounding magic circles. Suddenly, a spark flew from one circle, and the entire room erupted in an intense glow. A shocked Gray shouted, asking if Ariel was accidentally summoning the Liquidator right now. Bella felt the raw impact, but Ariel insisted the structure couldn't actually summon their enemy. Despite her words, the very space around the door began to tear wide open. Pure despair gripped them until the mechanism suddenly sputtered out and everything shut down. Ariel explained these devices only opened small rifts to siphon power from where the Liquidator lives. The cores used to crystallize this dark energy likely came from human lives. Ariel noted at least 10 souls had been sacrificed already to fuel this molding process. She assumed the people they saw earlier were just raw material for this gruesome ritual. I know what you're thinking. How could anyone be this twisted? Well, it gets worse. Ariel explained the black flames and strengthening crystals were just blueprints for a finished weapon. If they produce these conduits on a mass scale, no one knows what kind of terror they'll unleash. As the rifts vanished, the hunter asked if Bradley had even tried to summon the Liquidator. Ariel wasn't sure, but noted he failed because the spatial circles reached their absolute limit. She figured that this was the maximum power they could possibly set up. Bella Albright marveled at the mechanism, having never seen such advanced space-folding magic before. Ariel agreed, noting a single device like this would cost an entire nation's budget. With 8 machines here, Ariel imagined a massive organization must have funded this, though she ruled out the Discar Empire. Even as the largest country on Earth, the Empire couldn't manage this. They lacked the magical research for such crystals, suggesting a group even more advanced than an empire. The main character suggested the World Union Academy, and Ariel slowly nodded in agreement. She stated no other institution had the budget, leaving Bella completely shocked by the Academy's betrayal. After all, the World Union Academy is supposed to protect the world, not destroy it. Ariel understood Bella's denial, but insisted no other group could pull off this feat. The hunter argued that the entire Academy couldn't be evil, as most might still be allies. Before the world reset, the Academy's elite forces were the ones who fought the Liquidator directly. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. This gets wild. Alright, you and I are about to see if our hunter can handle the truth about the Academy. Ariel argues that most people at the Academy are actually good and would never allow these human experiments. But the Academy has endless hidden facilities, and someone with massive influence was definitely backing Varian from the shadows this very whole entire time. There is no way Bradley could have pulled this off using only his own limited authority. Bella Albright asks if the Academy can even be trusted. Ariel has watched them from the inside for decades, and she knows for a fact this organization is absolutely not trustworthy. Most people in there actually believe they are doing what is best for all humanity. These researchers have convinced themselves their crimes are for the greater good, leaving the actual truth buried deep within the dark shadows. Our hunter wants to know if they can find the mastermind behind this whole mess. But Ariel finds absolutely nothing. No communication devices, no magic residue. The cleanup crew was incredibly fast and very thorough. Now, pay attention. Just as they think they are safe, everything starts going boom. Ariel realizes a self-destruct mechanism was set to blow the second Bradley left the area. It is a trap meant to lure in investigators and then erase them along with the evidence. Bella Albright panics, shouting for them to get out before the entire place collapses on their heads. Ariel tells her to relax. She is a professor, and she is not about to be outdone by explosives. She throws up a powerful defensive spell and declares she will not die in such a stupid way. Stay inside the circle and I will protect you. The building keeps crumbling down. Ariel's magic holds strong against the chaos, until she finally teleports the entire group and every single hostage to safety. Everyone made it out alive. Bella and the hunter really thought their time was up this time. The teleportation was a massive strain because of the weight, but Ariel managed to pull it off. Ariel knows the Academy cannot ignore this evidence now. The next day, she goes straight to the board of directors to demand some answers. They tell her the survivors are already being treated in the Academy's medical wing. The director actually thanks them for shutting down Varian Bradley's illegal experiments. Ordon Alexandro brings up the machines Bradley used, each one worth more than a whole nation's budget. Varian had 8 of them. There is no way he could have gotten them by himself. Alexandro admits they are stolen goods. 78 agents were killed just to intercept that delivery. The group is stunned to realize these high-level crimes were committed by people they might know. And I know what you are thinking. The Academy itself is likely hiding these dangerous criminals right among their own staff. Everyone is furious that these monsters might never be punished just because they are part of the Academy. Ariel snaps that under this broken system, new students will never have a real chance to grow. Director Alexandro explains that the Academy even trains criminals if they have the talent. Bella is disgusted. She wants to see every single one of those criminals pay. Alexandro tells her the higher-ups disagree. Even as a director, he is just another subordinate. He might be the public face, but his actual authority is almost zero. He tells them they can only find the true masters if they become much stronger. The more they prove their worth, the deeper they can dig into the institution's dark secrets. He mentions a veteran with enough power to change the entire direction of the academy. Gray decides then and there he will become stronger than that veteran and change the rules. Alexandro reminds them that power is everything here, making it very strange that Ariel did not stand a chance against Varian. He knows one of the two students was the one who actually finished Varian. The director's divine eye is sharp. He cannot wait to see what kind of monster Ariel creates. Walking down the hall, Gray notices the strange marks on his back are starting to grow. He knows power is the only law here. To stop the Liquidator, he must uncover the truth behind everything. First, he needs to train. Suddenly, a random kid jumps out and tries to kick his face. Looks like things are heating up. Stick around, because Gray is about to show them what he is made of. This kid really claimed Gray was acting like he owned the whole academy. He barked that a rejected special admit didn't belong in that hall. Gray saw the pure hate in his eyes and asked if he was looking for a fight. Stick with me, because you're about to see how Gray handles this trash. When Ariel showed up, the bully backed off. Security was too tight for him to try anything risky right then. It was obvious Varian Bradley sent him. That strange kid was just a pawn meant to stir up trouble for Gray. The brat actually told the teacher that a theoretical student just kicked him. He whined that a Divine Eye special student had no right walking through the academy halls. But with no weapons or bruises, the teacher couldn't do a thing. Instead, she told Gray to just go beat the kid up. Neither Gray nor Ariel expected the situation to be handled like that. Arya, their teacher, admitted she technically shouldn't allow it, but she'd look the other way this time. Gray chose to let it go, though. Arya wondered why Divine Eye students were treated like such outcasts. Gray said they usually just got mocked, but things had never escalated to physical violence before now. Arya hated the bullying and wished she had more power to change things at this academy. Now pay attention, because we are about to see that Gray's past isn't what it seems. If Arya hadn't sacrificed her scholarship for him, he wouldn't even be here. Plus, Bella was determined to prove Gray as a programmer wasn't a mistake. Gray knew his teacher had the Divine Eye too. Someday, these special students would be the heroes standing against the Liquidator's return. Ariel thanked him but warned Gray not to act like this wasn't his problem too. Out of the entire Divine Eye group, Gray was the one she expected the most from. Amy White, Luke Mueller, and Jacob Bloomfield were all top-tier students destined for greatness in this world. But Ariel truly believed only one person could surpass humanity itself, and that was the boy standing right in front of her. Being compared to legendary heroes felt like a heavy burden to Gray. Still, he couldn't be weak, knowing the mastermind behind Varian was still trying to summon the Liquidator. Gray had returned to this timeline for one reason: to destroy that monster for good. You and I both know the stakes are incredibly high right now, especially since combat class is starting. The teacher told everyone to find their partners based on the list on the board. Gray stayed sharp for this practical drill. He knew the other students would use any excuse to talk trash again. Then he saw his name paired up with Leon Hart Apes. Leon was the top fencing student and the strongest first year around. The teacher matched skill levels and strictly ordered everyone to go all out. Gray realized right away that their skill levels weren't even close to being similar. Fighting the best student in school felt wrong, especially since he'd just barely arrived at the academy. But Mazaroy knew Leon Hart hated Divine Eye students and was probably itching to crush him. Leon approached with a calm smile, saying he was honored to fight Gray Lee now that he was top of the class. Leon stated he'd trained harder than anyone else just for the chance to cross blades with Gray. Mazaroy caught the intense, hungry look behind Leon's friendly smile. He realized Leon was absolutely loving the fact that he could legally attack him now. They both headed to center stage. The class erupted into chaos as students clashed, and Leon immediately lunged. Mazaroy barely blocked that massive sword strike. Leon followed up with a horizontal slash that sent Mazaroy flying backward. He charged again with an intense aura, his blade whistling just inches past Gray's face. Gray countered with a heavy blow that the blonde student actually blocked. Leon admitted Gray was strong for someone who didn't get in normally. Their duel sped up, swords clashing in a blur of high-speed strikes and parries. Mazaroy expected to lose fast, but he was actually holding his own against the genius. Even using both arms, he still couldn't match Leon Hart's terrifying brute force. Leon's swordsmanship was perfect and absolutely insane, refined to a terrifying level. Even with past life experience and elite training from his master, Gray was struggling to keep up. Watching Leon charge again while venting pure mana, Mazaroy realized this guy was a monster. Their fight drew a massive crowd as everyone realized Gray was actually keeping pace with the #1 student. Trust me, you and I need to see if Gray survives this insane showdown. Alright, you and I are jumping right into a fight where Gray is hitting his limit. Honestly, without Professor Heathcote's brutal training, he would have collapsed ages ago. He could only wonder why Leon Hart wasn't even breaking a sweat yet. Gray felt his energy draining fast. If he didn't end this right now, he was totally finished. Remembering the professor's order to treat this like a real life or death battle, Gray spotted a massive opening as his opponent raised his arms. He ducked low, slammed his hand down for leverage, and lashed out with a kick. He executed a perfect sweep that sent his rival flying. Leon Hart was stunned by this raw, street fight style, but the top student refused to lose here. Blades met at each other's throats. Gray called it a draw, but Leon Hart wasn't having it. In that final split second, Gray had only managed a swing, while Leon Hart could have easily delivered a lethal strike if he really wanted to. Since this was just practice, Leon Hart purposely aimed for Gray's heart instead of his vulnerable neck. Even with protective gear, aiming for the heart like that was a massive statement of superiority. Surprisingly, Leon Hart admitted defeat. Gray finally realized the huge gap between fencing and a real fight. Leon Hart knew that real combat was about way more than just sword skills. Gray admitted that using his feet felt like cheating in a fencing class, but the instructor did say to make it real. So by those rules, anything goes. Leon Hart immediately challenged Gray to go for another round. Gray was confused why Leon Hart was even humoring him, since in a real brawl, he'd be toast. Now watch this, because just as things get interesting, an arrogant student steps in to stop the fun. He started barking that regardless of the rules, this was supposed to be a proper fencing class. Basically, he claimed they shouldn't use anything but blades, questioning why a nobody like Gray was even allowed to spar with the best in class. He told Gray to stop acting tough just because he had some magic, claiming Gray didn't even belong there. Leon Hart shut him down, stating the professor chose Gray because he was the only worthy opponent. The professor chimed in, confirming she paired everyone based on their actual combat strength and potential. She made it clear Gray was the only one who could truly challenge Leon Hart. If that student didn't like it, he'd have to beat Gray to earn a shot at Leon. Desperate to prove himself, the guy bragged about crushing the examiner, insisting he shouldn't be compared to losers who barely managed to pass the entry tests. We both know that underestimating Gray is always a massive mistake. He saw Gray as a weakling, but Gray's true power was finally about to get some serious recognition. Worse yet, this loudmouth had just ruined Leon Hart's quality training time with his new rival. For that crime, Leon Hart thought he deserved the death penalty. Meanwhile, the teacher offered fake stages to anyone scared of real combat. Gray knew this wouldn't be a walk in the park since the guy passed the academy's standard entry. He was dead certain his opponent had way more raw strength and stamina than him. No matter the brutal training, you just cannot overcome years of elite conditioning. Gray's confidence was definitely starting to shake, but he took the challenge anyway. At least losing wouldn't get him kicked out. Even though the teacher told them to play nice, they both dropped into their stances and charged at each other with blinding speed. The student wanted to humiliate Gray, calling him a total loser as they closed the distance. Sparks flew everywhere as their swords collided, but then Gray twisted his wrist, sending the guy stumbling backward. Gray realized the guy's strikes were surprisingly weak. His strength didn't even come close to Gray's. He thought the kid might be holding back, but then he watched him drop his sword and tumble. The guy face-planted hard into the dirt, and the teacher immediately called the fight right then and there. The teacher apologized, claiming she was just aiming for the sword but accidentally smacked the student instead. The kid started crying, blood dripping down his face as he screamed for a rematch, claiming he was just surprised. The teacher surprisingly agreed, letting the duel continue until one of them finally decided to give up. The student charged Gray again with every ounce of his strength, but the result was exactly the same. The guy was left a sobbing, broken mess, forcing the teacher to finally call an end to the match. As he's dragged to the infirmary, "Trust me, you and I haven't seen the last of these two. All right. You and I are about to watch a total underdog take on an impossible challenge. This clash between different years is infamous because the gap is massive, and the freshmen have actually lost 35 straight times. According to the professor, 1 year of training is huge, so losing to a senior is just expected. Just putting up a good fight would impress everyone, while an actual victory would be an absolute miracle. He tells them not to stress, because just being chosen for this fight is already a privilege. Gray realizes this inter-year battle is going to be serious. As a special admission student, Gray sees this as the perfect stage to prove his combat skills. He is fully determined to train like crazy to take down the second-year champion. Now watch this, because things are about to get really ugly behind the scenes of the Academy Board during their secret meeting. Ariel manages the Divine Eye students, but Boudra is pushing to kick out Amy White for failing her exams. She only stays because of her special status, but that protection is starting to wear thin. It seems totally unfair to the other students who are expelled immediately after failing their tests. Ariel argues that Amy's world-class potential is being held back by severe physical side effects, limiting her power. But Boudra just scoffs, complaining that they are hiding behind the same old excuses every single time. He mocks her for making useless failures sound like hidden geniuses, while Ariel warns that pushing Amy too hard now will ruin her chance forever. Boudra is visibly annoyed, telling Ariel that he has heard all of these tired comparisons before. He asks if she really plans to keep people who do not meet the Academy's basic standards. Ariel stands her ground, saying the Academy exists for true talent, even if it does not fit their rigid system. Boudra snaps back that while special admissions used to be great, they are now just taking up valuable space. He points to students like Amy White and Bella Albright, and Jacob Bloomfield, claiming the once great Divine Eye program is finally losing its edge. Another professor suggests killing the program entirely, leaving Ariel in total shock. After all, a council of founders created it long ago, but it can be dismantled just as easily today. The other professors agree that the current Divine Eye group is not impressive and lacks any real sharpness. They mention that Bella Albright has improved, but dismiss it because her mana levels are still considered quite pathetic. However, the legendary former students were actually quite interesting. The room is split down the middle, with half wanting to save the program's legacy and half wanting it gone. You and I can see the pressure building, as the entire program faces its final hour and the board calls it outdated. He mockingly asks Ariel if she really thinks she is better at spotting talent than everyone else. Ariel wants to say yes, but she holds her tongue to avoid making things even worse. She realizes the other professors already dislike her and only care about what benefits the Academy's reputation. To win them over, she must stay quiet while Boudra claims she is past her prime and out of arguments. Another professor chimes in, acknowledging that she has done some great things in her younger days. The group basically tells Ariel she should retire now before she completely ruins her own legacy. They even tell her to go open her own school if she wants to play favorites so badly. They laugh, saying she would be lucky to find any students willing to join her failing program. Ariel knows her eye for talent is still sharp, but these kids just need time to actually grow. In time, they will prove themselves. She just has to stop them from being kicked out first. Professor Ariel is desperate to find any way to keep her students from being expelled from the program. That's when a professor mentions Gray Lee, hearing that he is a very promising swordsman among the freshmen. Boudra is still skeptical though, claiming that the kid doesn't look like much of anything to him. They decide the fate of the Divine Eye will depend entirely on Gray's performance in the next competition. Ariel looks at Heathcote, who just shakes his head. She admits Gray's style isn't meant for simple practice matches. When she says he only truly shines in desperate situations, the other professor absolutely loses his temper. And trust me, you and I will definitely watch if Gray proves that training skill isn't everything in a real fight. Alright, you and I are about to see if Ariel's faith in Gray's weird fighting style actually pays off. Alexandro cuts the meeting short since they were just going in circles anyway. He decides that seeing this Divine Eye student in action is the only way to settle this. Gray's next fight will decide if the whole program survives. The meeting ends, leaving Boudra practically drooling over the upcoming slaughter. Ariel feels totally helpless here, and Heathcote can see the dread on her face. She knows Gray's lethal power wasn't made for these fake sparring matches. He needs more time to train, but everyone is already demanding the impossible from him. Still, she's desperate for Gray to step up and save the future for these elite students. He's their only hope of protecting the special admission program. Finally, the big day arrives as the first and second years prepare for war. First up, Leon Hart, the top student among the first years. Then comes the second-year ace, Lewinel Hartman, followed by Gray Lee and the second-year challenger, Debel Radardla. Gray immediately recognizes Debel as that same jerk who kicked him in the hallway for absolutely no reason. The stands are packed with professors, all eager to see what these kids can really do. Leon Hart is confused why so many teachers are here. Even the top second-year student admits he's never seen this many faculty members at a single duel. Last year only 3 professors showed up. Why is the entire staff watching today? Apius suggests they're all here for Gray, basically bragging that he has excellent taste in students. Boudra cuts in, announcing that this is officially the final stand for the Divine Eye program. Now pay attention, Boudra just dropped the bomb that the class is being deleted entirely. Gray is stunned. Ariel knows that if she confirms the truth, Gray will push himself past his limits. She's terrified he'll unleash that dark power. In his state, using it could literally kill him. She tries to play it off, telling Gray that Boudra is just trying to mess with his head. But Gray sees his teacher's hands trembling. He plays along, but deep down, he knows she's lying. Boudra is secretly praying for them to get humiliated by these older, stronger second years. He wants a pathetic loss to prove the Divine Eye is a joke. But Gray isn't about to let this guy keep insulting Professor Ariel. Ariel is shocked to see Gray standing up for her like this. Boudra snaps back, claiming every sane person in the room knows Gray is going to lose. Gray just stares him down and promises to prove him wrong. Boudra is visibly fuming at the kid's nerves. The team split up to prep for the duel. Ariel is proud of Gray, but she's also terrified of what he's planning. If he were facing the #1 student, his raw swordsmanship might have given him a shot, but he's matched against the worst possible opponent, Debel Radardla. You and I need to watch this. Bradley surgically gave Debel inhumanly fast reflexes. Debel is a living counter to Gray's ambush style. Ariel is terrified that Gray will resort to his forbidden secret ability. She begs him not to worry about her and to please, please not overdo it. Gray just gives her a chill look and says he's got it. Then, the announcement roars out, the top student duel is starting. The arena is protected with magic to keep anyone from actually dying. To win this mock battle, you just have to force your opponent's protective barrier to activate. The battle between the top students of each year finally begins. Leon Hart charges the second-year ace, unleashing a relentless storm of massive, heavy sword strikes. His rival blocks every single hit with ease, before launching a brutal counterattack. Leon acts fast, dropping to the floor and slamming a surprise kick right into the guy's face. But the exhaustion is hitting hard. Leon realizes he just can't maintain Gray Lee's insane level of intensity. The rival admits Leon has gotten stronger since last year. But he shakes off the kick instantly and decides it's time to kick things into high gear. He ramps up the pressure, taunting Leon to see if the first year can even keep up. Leon manages to dodge a few, but a surprise blow gets through and pops his protective barrier wide open. Luinol is declared the winner of this epic battle between the Academy's top students. Next up is the challenger fight. As Leon Hart walks past our hero, he stops to wish Gray the best of luck in his battle. Trust me, you and I are about to see if Gray can back up his big talk. Alright, you and I are about to see if Gray can truly beat Debbie by remembering the monsters he faced before returning in time. His rival, Debbie, stalks forward while dragging his heavy sword across the ground. He screams that he will send Gray to hell just like his teacher Bradley as the battle finally begins. Gray charges head-on. Their swords clash in a burst of sparks until Debbie violently throws him away. Gray feels a massive weight as his right arm begins to tremble while holding the sword. Teacher Ariel warned that Gray's reflexes and arm strength were already being pushed to their limits. Realizing the gap in power, Gray knows his usual tricks won't work against this sinister stranger. Gray thinks of his secret ability, but his teacher warned him never to use it, regardless of the situation. Even if this tournament matters, it is not worth his life, since that power could actually kill him. Plus, the arena's defensive barrier might shatter, and he risks accidentally erasing his opponent from existence. Now watch, as Debbie charges head-on against Gray once again, ready to risk it all to protect the Divine Eye spot. Gray still refuses to kill his opponent. Suddenly, Debbie crouches for a heavy strike, which Gray blocks before counterattacking with a downward swing. Gray defends another assault and realizes Debbie's raw physical stats and reflexes are simply too much to handle. He notices that Debbie is not lacking technique at all. Instead, he is actually holding back. Gray looks at the enemy's face and sees a sinister smile paired with a truly malicious gaze. Then Debbie lunges with a strike Gray cannot dodge. As he raises his sword, Gray realizes he won't be fast enough. It hits him. The enemy weakened the attack on purpose, just to force Gray into a defensive position. From the stands, Teacher Ariel notices a strange purple energy pulsating inside Debbie's heart. This energy is concentrated entirely on his left side. She notes that these second-year students have some seriously unpleasant personalities. The Divine Eye student is having a nightmare of a time blocking these relentless second-year attacks. The crowd considers this proof that the Divine Eye spot should probably be abolished. Boudre claims that the special spot will fall into chaos if they keep waiting for these students to develop. Everyone agrees that Boudre is a thoughtful student who truly cares about the Academy's well-being. Teacher Ariel orders them to stop the fight immediately as the situation is getting way too dangerous. Boudre mocks her, claiming a simulated fight has no danger since the arena's protection spell blocks fatal hits. He says the students should fight seriously, unless she has some other secret reason to stop them. Trust me, Ariel knows that even with this protection, Gray is still in grave danger. Suddenly, a massive surge of malevolent purple mana erupts from the second-year student. Darkness coats his blade as he charges a massive attack, triggering an explosion that splits the arena in half. Even the protective barrier itself is completely destroyed in the process. The attack nearly hits Boudre, and Ariel is furious that Bradley implanted this magic in his student. She realizes the spectator barrier is too strong for her to use her prison magic. Ariel orders them to cancel the tournament and drop the barrier immediately because this is a total emergency. She screams for Gray to run, knowing that stopping the fight from the outside will take too long. Gray knows fleeing is useless. Turning his back means death as the entire arena begins to tremble. She warns that the teacher's intervention spells will take 30 seconds to reach them. Ariel knows it is a huge risk, but she trusts Gray. She yells for him to become his sword. She asks him to move in union with his power, and Gray starts wondering how to achieve it. Gray dodges an incredibly fast blow, determined to win because his teacher actually believes in him. His only option is for him and the sword to become one single, focused entity. A dark blow hurtles toward him with full force, but Gray remains completely motionless. As the blow lands, a massive mana explosion erupts, and Gray appears behind his opponent with a red aura. The opponent is caught completely off guard, as Gray perceives everything moving in extreme slow motion. You and I just witnessed a legend born as Gray strikes from behind with unbelievable speed. Alright, you and I are about to dive into this clash. Gray strikes his enemy's face, but a protective barrier activates, saving him from a direct hit. But even as the barrier starts to crack and crumble, the residual impact still hits like a truck. Rardle is sent flying, smashing right through the arena walls. That is the sheer, terrifying power behind Gray's attack. He actually did it, shattered the defense, and left his opponent severely mangled. Professor Heat checks if the second year is okay. Medics are called, but incredibly, Bradley's star student, Rardle, begins to pull himself up. He stands tall, dripping with dark magic, and looking completely unfazed. Ariel screams for Gray to stay sharp. This isn't over. Now pay attention, because the enemy is unleashing a wave of pure dark magic. Massive dark tentacles erupt, tearing the arena apart as they lunge for Gray Lee. Ariel demands the barrier be shut down, but Heat is struggling. Meanwhile, Gray is performing high-speed jumps just to stay alive. Rardle stops the long-range spam and suddenly blurs across the distance, charging straight for Gray. Their blades collide again, sending a massive shower of sparks flying into the air. Gray realizes this guy isn't human. No ordinary person has this kind of abysmal speed and raw, crushing strength. Then again, Gray is far from normal himself, especially with the power he's manifesting. Gray slips away from the clash and teleports behind Devil, who, honestly, looks perfectly fine despite taking that massive hit earlier. Gray goes for a point-blank strike from the rear, but he underestimates the enemy's reaction time. Gray takes a heavy hit and spits out a spray of vital fluid. Ariel is terrified her favorite student is done for. Gray is in agony, knowing if he doesn't react now, he loses the fight. Starving for power, Gray falls into a dark obsession, and his entire aura visibly begins to warp and shift. In one clean motion, Gray delivers a slash that severs both of the enemy's arms. An unexplained force explodes within Gray, forcing him to land that final, fatal strike. As the enemy's limbs fall, a thick, suffocating darkness begins to pour from the wounds. The teachers watch in total horror until the barrier finally drops, giving them a chance to swarm onto the arena floor. All the teachers move fast to shut down the fight and lock Rardle in place. Gray leans heavily on his blade, gasping for air. His heart is racing from the deep, jagged gashes across his body. Blood is pouring out fast. He's in critical condition, and Ariel immediately starts using her healing magic. Knowing he's on the brink of death, she barks orders for every teacher to help stabilize Gray right now. Finally, his vitals steady. Just a few moments later, Gray is actually back on his feet. The staff is stunned by his recovery speed. Even after burning through all that power, Ariel sees that Gray's soul is still intact. She declares the danger is over. The healing magic did its job, and the worst is finally behind them. Their plan actually worked, weakening the counterattack just like Heat had predicted they could. Ariel is still furious at Heat, though. She knows Gray was inches away from dying in that ring. Heat just shrugs it off, claiming they suppressed the damage enough for the healing magic to handle the rest. Regardless, Heat plans to handle the next phase solo, even if it takes a while. Things got messy, but Rardle is headed to the infirmary. Through all this chaos, you and I are about to see a major truth confirmed. That protective barrier belonging to the second-year representative, Rardle, was triggered by Gray Lee's strike. That means our first-year underdog officially takes the win. The crowd goes wild. Gray just pulled off a historic feat by taking down a top-tier senior student. The Divine Eye class just broke a 35-match losing streak. Heat says that the count doesn't even matter anymore. This fight proved one thing: Ariel was right about her student all along. Everyone has to admit it. The plan to scrap the Divine Eye class is officially dead and buried. The director is eating humble pie, realizing he almost lost a massive talent. Ariel looks at a recovering Gray with deep, sincere gratitude. As for those who wanted the class gone, they have got some serious soul-searching to do. Boudra is in a tight spot. Feeling ashamed, Gray Lee lies through his teeth, claiming he didn't know he could use that power. Ariel knows he's bluffing. She saw him use that exact same move to crush the Ogre General. He is just hoping his teacher plays along. To stop the executives, Gray needs to be the only one with this power. Ariel gets it. And trust me, you and I can see he doesn't act like someone living for the first time. Alright, you and I are diving right back into Gray Lee's journey. She explained to the director that magic alone could not analyze Gray Lee's power through conventional methods, but she could see the truth with her own eyes. Ariel had been tracking Gray's growth with Heat Coat, which was the only reason the boy could even control his energy at this level. She was still hunting for the perfect way to truly unlock and sharpen this hidden potential. Ariel demanded total control over Gray's development, and after seeing that fight, Director Alexandro could not refuse her offer. The director officially handed over the entire Divine Eye Special Group to Ariel to oversee Gray Lee's path. He promised that whatever resources the Academy had, Ariel only needed to ask and they would be hers. Both were relieved the Divine Eye Group was safe, but they quickly headed underground to check on Devil Radar's condition. The director wanted the group by his side while Ariel tagged along to help break down the situation. Analyzing the results, they realized the power used on Devil Radar matched those research crystals perfectly, leaving zero doubt that a high-ranking executive was involved. When asked about Devil Radar's fate, Ariel confirmed he was gone. His soul vanished the second that attack triggered. That dark energy likely corrupted his very being the moment they forced it into his body. It was clear that Gray Lee was the target, a brutal payback for what he did to Varian Bradley. Watch closely. Devil Radar being manipulated after Varian's death points to a dangerous third group in the shadows. Ariel and Gray both knew a much larger enemy was hiding behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. Her gut told her the corruption reached deep into the highest levels of the academy itself. Gray Lee stepped up to help his Divine Eye teacher, noting he could finally use his power without soul damage. Still, he admitted the physical toll on his body was becoming much harder to handle than before. Heatcoat suggested ramping up the training, while Ariel believed Gray would soon master this energy completely. With the conversation finished, Gray made his way back to the training grounds for more. Heatcoat warned that this next phase was painful, offering a safer, slower path if he wanted it. Gray Lee chose the hard road anyway, and Heatcoat told him to get his mind ready. Gray focused on merging with his sword, a violent red aura beginning to surge through his entire body. In one explosive motion, he struck forward, completely shattering the heavy armor standing in his way. He was a blur across the field, cutting down targets so fast the watching teachers were stunned by his speed. Another devastating strike, and another set of armor was reduced to scrap metal. But the recoil hit him like a truck, forcing him to cough up blood as his body buckled. After one final spinning slash, he collapsed to his knees and drifted into total unconsciousness. The mages instantly flooded him with recovery magic, and within moments, Gray was back on his feet. Heatcoat noted his endurance was climbing, and eventually, his physical frame would adapt to the pressure. I know what you're thinking, that level of power has to come with a massive cost. The professor explained that the pain meant he was finally shattering his personal limits. Even so, Heatcoat knew this was brutal, leaving the choice to keep going entirely up to Gray. Without a second thought, Gray Lee pushed forward, ready for yet another grueling round of hell. But Ariel stepped in and shut it down, ordering them to limit this training to once per day. Gray argued that since his soul was safe and his body was healed, he should keep going. Ariel snapped back that magic heals flesh, but repeated trauma would fry his nerves and wreck his senses. She warned him that if he kept pushing, he might lose the use of his hand forever. Even Heatcoat had to agree, admitting that doing this multiple times a day was bordering on insanity. One mage couldn't help but wonder why a boy this powerful was in such a rush for more strength. Ariel took the weight of it, blaming herself for letting Gray enter that life-or-death fight with Bradley. Now the vultures were circling for revenge, and the Devil Radar incident was just the opening act. She revealed that criminal groups were lurking within the Academy shadows, the same ones who stole the catalyst. Stick with me, because Gray Lee is about to realize that even heavy security might not be enough. You and I are about to see that for Gray, power is his only path to survival. He insists that stopping the experiment was his choice, not Ariel's. Deep down, his real mission is putting an end to the Liquidator once and for all. Ariel calls Gray an elite student and promises she will do everything to help him reach his true potential. Heath senses something is up. Ariel then asks Gray if he wants to know the quickest and safest way for a swordsman to gain power. Heath jumps in, suggesting that a new sword is the fastest way to level up. The Academy provided him with a high-level custom weapon, or so they thought. Ariel explains that, while it is okay for a freshman, the blade just cannot handle Gray's raw energy. She realizes no ordinary sword can survive his massive power output. After seeing his shattered blade, the professor decides to take him to her personal vault. Heath is stunned. He cannot believe the professor is actually giving one of her own weapons to a student. She spins a key in the air to open a portal, declaring that Gray is finally worthy of her personal arsenal. Gray is standing there in total shock after hearing those words from his teacher. Now look at this with me. Gray enters the vault and sees piles of gold and endless magical artifacts. The place is massive. Ariel starts hunting for the weapons section, and once they find it, she tells Gray to pick a blade that calls to him. Gray looks around and realizes every single sword in this place feels incredibly dangerous and powerful. Heath knows for a fact that Gray will never find a better collection of blades than this one. Ariel admits that with so many epic options, choosing is hard. Usually, she would want to test every single one, but because of Gray's unique power, they only get one shot at this. They decide to test them one by one, starting with the sharpest blade available. Gray starts the test by picking up a massive and incredibly heavy sword. Ariel claims that despite its weight, this blade slices with surgical precision and insane force. A wooden totem appears for practice. Gray sets his stance, twists his body, and lets out a devastating swing. The blow completely obliterates the totem, yet the blade itself does not have a single scratch. Ariel likes the power but worries it is too heavy for a real fight. Heath adds that sharpness means nothing if you cannot hit your target. Still, it is worth keeping for those moments when he has to face a massive, tank-like opponent. Ariel gives him a magical storage pouch so he can carry the heavy blade without it slowing him down. Gray asks if he should really be borrowing this. Ariel says it is better with him than gathering dust in her warehouse. Plus, she is putting this weapon into the hands of someone who can actually master its power. She tells him that when he finally faces the enemy behind Vian, the executive summoner, he will be the one laughing while his enemies regret that they do not have a sword like this. Gray thinks back to his brutal defeat against the Liquidator, and it fuels him. He bows and thanks the professor. Heath warns him to keep the sword hidden, unless he actually plans on using it to kill someone. On the open market, this thing would sell for at least 10 billion and 10,000 gold coins. I know what you are thinking. That price is insane. Gray is too shocked to accept it, but Ariel refuses to take it back. Gray just cannot wrap his head around being trusted with such a legendary treasure. Ariel says if she could protect the Divine Eye's admission for 10 billion, she would pay it in a heartbeat. To her, this sword is simply a long overdue reward for Gray, saving the Divine Eye from destruction. Then she jokingly threatens him, asking if he thinks the Divine Eye is not even worth 10 million. Gray quickly backs down and thanks her. The Black Swordsman vows that he will take absolute care of this massive, legendary blade. Ariel also wants him to have a standard weapon for normal battles. Gray never imagined the professor's collection would be this mind-blowing. Heath notes that nobody in the world has an eye for talent quite like Ariel. With her Divine Eye, she can basically print money. Ariel then asks the instructor, Heathcote, which weapon he thinks fits best. After looking over the options, Heathcote points toward a weapon, with a shining golden hilt. Gray picks up the thin, simple-looking blade to test it out. He delivers a few fast, surgical strikes. It feels well made, but Gray can tell something is off. Heathcote immediately agrees that the sword is not for him. He mentions a secret sword created during an experiment, thinking it might actually be the perfect fit for our hero. Trust me, next time we are going to see Gray wield this spatial sword. Stick around. It is about to get wild. Alright, you and I are about to see Gray handle a weapon that's anything but ordinary. He looks closer and realizes something weird. The blade doesn't even have a sharp edge. Professor Heathcote explains this sword is a high-tech experiment, not meant for real combat, but crafted to be incredibly durable despite its blunt edge. Gray gets the vision. With the massive power he is packing, he might not even need a sharp edge to win. Heathcote argues that a regular blade simply wouldn't survive the sheer force of Gray's overflowing energy. He warns that if Gray keeps leveling up, normal swords will just end up holding him back. In the future, Gray needs to imagine a style where he doesn't rely on an edge to dominate the fight. Because of that, this tech sword might be his perfect match. Now, Heathcote shows exactly how this thing works. It doesn't just cut it, completely deforms whatever it hits. But Ariel? She thinks Gray should stick with a traditional blade. She asks if there are any other weapons he wants to test out, pointing out gear beyond just swords. Gray spots some axes and other heavy gear, but he's determined to test every sword available. Check this out, a crimson sword that's way lighter and stronger than the previous ones. He moves to a massive, long sword next, feeling a bizarre energy radiating from deep within the steel. Ariel explains it's a graduate's old blade. It's not exactly a legendary weapon, but she lets him test it anyway, and Gray is immediately hooked. The moment he grips it, the balance is perfect. It honestly feels like an extension of his own arm. The blade gleams, clearly built for making incredibly sharp and precise strikes. It feels so natural, like he's been training with it since birth. Gray admits he's never held a sword this easy in his entire life. Ariel suggests trying one more to see if it can really handle the full scale of his power. Gray asks if it's okay if he breaks the graduate's blade. Ariel smiles, saying the sword would much rather break in his hands than gather dust sitting idle. Gray agrees and asks for the name of the student who actually forged this masterpiece. Ariel says the name is Medallum Norm and Gray freezes. He knows that name. Medallum Norm is the greatest magic blacksmith in history. Gray is absolutely stunned. He's actually holding a weapon crafted by the legendary Medallum Norm himself. Next stop? The training arena. Time to see what this legendary Medallum Norm blade can really do. The goal is to push the blade's strength and durability to the absolute limit. But before that, Ariel hands Gray the experimental technology sword to start the test. Now pay attention, they're starting with the weirdest sword to see how Gray's power affects it. Gray centers himself, trying to become one with the blade as his mana starts to overflow. The connection snaps, so he tries again, completely enveloping the weapon in his magic. He immerses the blade in his power, desperately seeking that perfect bond. But his power won't activate with this sword. Gray knows something is weirdly wrong. He tells Ariel he feels totally normal, no power boost at all. The sword must be a dud for him, so they toss it aside. It's official. This high-tech weapon won't work with Gray's unique abilities. Since that failed, they decide to go with the most traditional blade in the set. Ariel retrieves a sword from a magical box and asks Gray to try again. He goes through the mental focus again, syncing with the steel as he prepares for a devastating strike. This time, it actually works. An intense aura explodes around him, But suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in his head. There's no more time. The voice adds that when the time comes, something big is going to happen. Heatcoat tells Ariel that letting loose his full power shouldn't be an issue with this specific blade. Ignoring the strange voices, Gray charges the training dummies with surgical precision. The raw power is identical to before, but his swings? They feel incredibly smooth and effortless. With one brutal vertical slash, he completely shatters the heavy training armor. His body feels light as air. He's a blur of motion, landing strike after strike with zero effort. As armor shatters all around him, the mages watching realize Gray is on a whole different level today. Gray tears through the arena, wiping out every armor in his path. At this speed, he feels like he's literally flying. But as he lands the final blow, a trickle of blood starts dripping from the corner of his mouth. Gray realizes the target count was the same as last time, but he just cleared them all at once. Before, he could barely take out half. Now, they're all down, and he's actually staying on his feet without blacking out. But the mages gasp. Blood is soaking through his shirt from a massive, deep gash across his chest. Ariel panics and screams for him to drop the blade. Trust me, you'll want to see what's next. You and I are about to watch Gray enter absolute hell. He drops his sword and collapses as the professors rush to heal him. Gray is barely hanging on, and a professor warns him to stop pushing his body to the absolute limit. Ariel explains that losing this much vital fluid will wreck his stamina. He needs to rest right now. He just shattered a limit he never reached before, which might be a divine sign. But if Gray moves now, he is in serious trouble. In a real fight without a healer nearby, he would have to be way more careful. Looking at his weapon, Gray realizes there is not a single scratch on the blade after that brutal combat. Using his divine eye, he sees the sword glowing even brighter, having endured the full intensity of the fight. Suddenly, Ariel spots something in the sky. A massive pink magical explosion rocks the World Union Academy. Everyone is stunned as the building starts to crumble. Students scramble to flee while heavy debris rains down. The academy instructors quickly throw up magical barriers to protect the panicked students. Heathcote explains that the blast hit a vault full of dangerous materials. Someone clearly blew the place up just to steal them. Right after the blast, he spotted someone using teleportation magic in a fraction of a second. Now pay attention, because this shouldn't be possible. The vault has anti-teleportation magic and was built to withstand massive explosive spells. Ariel notices the unmistakable scent of executioner magic lingering within the rising smoke. They likely used those crystals from the underground lab to tear right through the outer wall. Gray realizes Varian Bradley's allies are behind this. They actually made a move on the Academy headquarters. Several items are missing from the vault. While the details are secret, it is not the kind of place where a random outsider could just cause an explosion. By the way, they took out the teleportation inhibitor and fled. This screams inside job, which means the Academy is not an organization we can trust anymore. Ariel wonders if they ever truly were a trustworthy group. Gray says if the enemy controls the Academy, they can take whatever they want. But the only reason they blew the vault is because there was no legal way to get those stolen items. Ariel is not sure what the higher-ups think, but the culprits are definitely blood drinkers. They must have infiltrated the school, and Gray remembers they were the ones who took out Bella's father. The professor warns that by taking out Varian, Gray has put a massive target on his own back. So, she tells him never to let his guard down, especially when he is outside the academy. After their talk, Gray heads down the stairs. When he gets to class, he finds the students in a total panic, trembling with intense fear. Sensing the heavy vibe, he figures it has everything to do with the explosion at the academy. Trust me, I know what you're thinking. Everyone is terrified of the outdoor exercise notice, but Gray reads the letter and feels zero fear. It is a brutal mission involving 16-hour marches and camping in monster-infested territory for an entire week. Plus, the extra combat training is going to be incredibly heavy. Leon asks how Gray can be so calm. They are facing 16 hours of marching a day with no guarantee of sleep because of the monsters. Over half the students quit every year because of this task. Gray simply explains that in real marches, you never know when the enemy will attack. Back when he did executioner training with his old squad, there was no such thing as a time limit. They tossed the warriors into the mountains and made them march through infested forests for a full week. Some recruits actually died from monster attacks during training, even with professors watching over them. Now, that won't happen here. Leon realizes even hellish exercises don't scare this boy anymore. Looking at everyone's fear, Gray can't shake the feeling that something nasty is lurking out there. The professor announces the start of the annual outdoor exercise for all the new freshmen. Most who fail this challenge will likely quit and never make it to their second year. The professor tells them to persevere as the mission begins. Our hero arrives at the edge of the Wintley continent. Gray remembers this place is basically uninhabited and wonders why. The students follow the professors into the deep forest. A student asks if they are on the right path, but the professor says training is supposed to follow the most challenging route. They follow the professor up a steep, brutal trail, and the weight of exhaustion starts to set in. Only 8 hours have passed, and trust me, you and I know they're only halfway through this march. The students are already exhausted. All right, you and I are diving into a hellish first day where the journey is barely halfway done. The professor claims their bodies will adapt over time, and that the start is always the most brutal part. But Leon and the crew quickly realize he is lying as the crushing exhaustion only gets worse. Ignoring the professor, they see that Gray shows no fatigue. Leon decides this is the ultimate test and he must push himself to his limit. He can't help but notice that Gray Lee hasn't even broken a sweat since they started. Suddenly, an exhausted female student is attacked by a spider, scaring her half to death. It almost hits her face, but Gray saves her with one perfectly aimed throw of a dagger. Trust me, watch Gray closely here. He kills the creature and warns about venom, while Leon realizes Gray is scouting the entire area for surprise ambushes. To keep this level of focus after 8 hours of marching, that takes some seriously intense training. Gray's stamina is on another level thanks to the brutal conditioning he finished before returning in time. For him, just getting a decent night's sleep feels like luxury compared to his previous hell. But Ariel's warning about keeping their guard up outside the academy walls is still weighing heavy. These training exercises take them into open areas with absolutely zero security. The academy knows their location, but our hero still prays that nothing goes south during this outdoor training. Just then, the professor calls for a halt. The exhausted students desperately ask what is happening. He announces it is time for their meal training exercise. Everyone is visibly thrilled, already dreaming of a massive feast and thanking the gods for a break where they can eat their fill. Gray, however, gets a bad vibe the moment he hears the word meal. The professor drops the hammer. This isn't a break, it is a lesson in marching survival. To eat, you must cook. He splits them into squads to keep the groups balanced. Each team gets a designated space with just the most basic tools to prepare their food. Squad C features Leon Hart and his team, while Squad D is led by Gray Lee alongside Bask, Rumia, and Boss. Now, you and I might wonder if Gray can actually lead, since he's the Academy's special student. Surprisingly, the members of Squad D introduce themselves and seem pretty friendly. They are way calmer than expected. Gray thought they'd hate taking orders from him. He asks if they're truly okay with him leading. But they don't even get why he's asking. After seeing him fight, there is nobody they'd rather have in charge. They grab the gear, ready for orders. Gray realizes his reputation has shifted everything. That last match made a huge impact. At this academy, merit is the only thing that matters. One student points out a major problem: they don't actually have enough food in their supplies. The student only has a pot and fire starter, so Professor Heat explains that on a real field march, no food or gear is handed out. Apius argues that modern operations use magical storage and full logistical support. The professor shuts him down, saying that only applies to perfectly planned missions. In emergency situations like a mid-battle camp or if the supply officer is killed, you will have to survive a long march with zero prep. Moreover, magical storage bags are far too rare for anyone outside large military units, so each of you will carry your own heavy equipment on this march. Most people would just give up. Silence falls. Leon apologizes, and Gray realizes he's been underestimating how rare his own bag is. He had accepted his as if it were a simple sword bag, but now he knows it is a priceless treasure. The professor then reveals the good news. The forest is crawling with monsters, but they've been using magical repellent on the trail. He tells them not to worry about food because without repellent, the monsters will show up. The students realize the trap once that repellent is gone. The predators will come hunting. Squad D asks their leader what to do, and Gray says they must hunt the monsters for food because it is their only survival option. Gray spots small monster tracks, and you and I both know the real survival training is only just beginning. Alright, you and I are about to see if Gray's single sword is actually enough. But his squad is visibly shaking, dreading the thought of real combat in a forest this massive and unforgiving. Gray explains that meat-eaters will find them first, which should make their job much easier. If they stay still, other squads will steal their prey, so they have to keep moving. If fighting monsters is too much, they can always settle for finding snakes and insects to eat. Usually, you would have to settle for eating insects to survive, but one girl insists they hunt real monsters since this forest is absolutely crawling with them. Another student cuts in, reminding everyone that Gray is the leader they follow. With that, Squad D pushes deeper into the woods, tracking monster footprints across the dirt. Now, pay attention, because here comes the part where Gray catches a scent and a massive bear suddenly bursts from the trees. The beast lunges. One student freezes, paralyzed at seeing a real monster up close. He barely dodges, stunned by the creature's speed. But his body moves instinctively, a direct result of those brutal training exams he survived at the academy. He draws his blade, positions himself behind the monster, and shouts that he won't be underestimated before delivering a massive strike that causes the beast to bleed out. Enraged, the bear swings back instantly, aiming its lethal claws right at the student. But before the student can actually get hit by those claws, Gray steps in and saves his life. With one precise strike, Gray severs the bear's hand before it can kill his friend. The beast attacks again with its remaining arm, but Gray is faster, slicing off the creature's left hand too. Gray finishes the monster and sheathes his sword, casually noting how tough those bones were. His teammate offers thanks, but Gray warns that monsters can still move even after a fatal blow. He tells him to prioritize survival over just getting the kill shot. The squad member admits that real monsters are nothing like training with classmates. They set up a fire and start roasting the bear meat for their dinner. Gray notes that every monster species tastes different. He adds that studying local wildlife is vital before going on any expedition. Gray recommends hunting wild boars in unknown areas, since they don't eat poison, and the meat actually tastes decent compared to other monsters. A teammate asks if he studied survival techniques alongside his swordsmanship. Gray just stays modest, claiming he doesn't know that many things. Suddenly, another squad emerges from the trees begging for a meal, since their own hunting was a total disaster and they were actually reduced to eating slimy frogs. Gray looks at their haul and realizes it could feed the whole class. He agrees to share, making the hungry students erupt in excitement. You saw that too, right? The professor steps in and ruins the party by banning all food exchanges between the different teams. He kicks the other squad out, leaving them to hunt for themselves. After more marching, they finally reach the campsite. The field camping exercise has officially begun. While some students are happy to eat, others just collapse from exhaustion. Someone asks if they have to keep hunting for the rest of the week. Professor Rent tells them they have canned rations and individual tents, but they must still gather materials and build their own campfires in the designated spots. He warns them to prepare for surprise night attacks. Teams need to set up night watches to prevent being caught off guard. The professor catches a few students whispering about strategies that might actually break the rules. He tells them they were spread out intentionally so no one could relax. Now, the training officially begins immediately. The faster they move, the more sleep they will get before the sun rises. Gray's squad debates the watch. 2 people per shift means only 4 hours of sleep. Gray suggests a different plan, sticking to just 1 person per shift. A teammate complains that the middle shifts are the worst for getting actual rest. Gray volunteers for that brutal second shift. Stick with me, because you and I are about to see things get wild. That purple-haired kid Gray saved earlier didn't hesitate to take the 3rd shift. Rumia, Bask, and Venus volunteered to cover the very first watch. At the end of every shift, whoever was on duty had to wake the next person before finally heading to bed. All right, you and I are about to see if Gray's instincts are as sharp as everyone says. While he sleeps, a shadow creeps in. Rumia starts feeling heavy-eyed on her watch, but the second that mysterious man gets close, Gray's eyes snap open. He heard a faint, strange noise just seconds ago and immediately stands up, drawing his blade. Gray knew that if this were a monster, the sound would be way louder and more chaotic. This was definitely a human trying to stay hidden. Peeking through his tent flap, Gray only sees Rumia, who looks like she is about to drift off. Since she hadn't noticed a thing, he wonders for a second if his mind was just playing tricks. Still, Gray follows his gut that someone is lurking nearby and stands up. He thinks it might be the professor checking if they're maintaining proper vigilance, but Gray doesn't drop his guard and decides to investigate. He remembers Ariel's warning that after he defeated Varia, he'd become a target for bloodsuckers, and that he should be extremely careful once he finally left the academy. Now pay attention here, Gray treats this like a real assassin is coming and takes every precaution necessary. He knows long-range attacks are possible, so staying still in that tent would be a huge mistake. Without alerting Rumia, Gray slips out of the tent and starts sneaking through the dark forest like a ghost. The full moon makes the forest look almost like daylight. It's easier to spot the enemy, but even harder for Gray to stay hidden. Gray moves carefully, recalling every bit of his divine bow training. In his past life, Ariel taught him that the right way to walk starts from the very back of the feet. You have to move on your toes first to ensure absolute silence. Even stepping on branches or leaves wouldn't sound like a normal human footstep using this method. Instead, it would sound more like the wind or animals, never attracting any unwanted attention. During that training, they walked barefoot through mountains to become one with nature. Gray follows those old instructions to the letter. Soon, he spots the man with the dagger. Gray uses stones to lure the intruder right into a clever trap. Instantly, Gray has a sword at the man's throat, ordering him to freeze. He demands answers, or else he'll end him right there. Gray asks for his name and which group he belongs to. I know what you're thinking. Is it an assassin? Nope. It's just the old mustachioed professor testing him. The professor explains he was just checking if Gray was properly guarding the camp, but he never expected to be caught from behind with a sharp blade pressed against his own throat. At this rate, the professor can't even tell who is teaching who anymore. Gray still thinks he might be faking it, though. He figures if the professor truly wanted him dead, he would be carrying a much deadlier weapon. Deciding it's safe to trust him, Gray lowers his blade. Right then, Rumia appears with her sword drawn to investigate. Finding the professor and Gray there together, she asks what on earth they're doing. The professor explains his little surprise test and mentions that Gray had actually sensed him before he even arrived at the scene. He admits their vigilance is perfect, saying he's never seen freshmen set up such an impeccable camp before tonight. Rumia points out that Gray should have been sleeping while she handled the actual watch. The professor finds it odd that Gray wasn't assigned to watch duty, while Gray asks if the professor stepped on a branch as he approached. The professor confirms he did, and Gray explains that he immediately recognized that specific sound as coming from a human. The professor is stunned that Gray detected an imminent attack just by a snapping branch while he was supposed to be sleeping. Gray just shrugs, saying he wasn't in a deep sleep yet and it was just a coincidence. The professor starts laughing because on top of that simulated battle from yesterday, Gray just keeps surprising the entire academy. He wonders if they even have anything left to teach this kid. Then he announces that Gray is banned from any more night watch drills. After all, if Gray handles everything alone, the others won't learn anything. Gray asks if his absence will mess up the squad. The professor says Gray's group won't face surprise attacks between 1 and 3 in the morning. You and I know they've earned it. All right, you and I are about to see Gray Lee's squad crush the vigilance exam without him lifting a finger. The professor noted their perfect marks and ordered everyone except Gray Lee to move on to the actual training. Suddenly, the professor froze. Gray Lee had completely masked his presence and moved right behind him without a sound. He began to wonder if our main character was part of some secret elite stealth unit. No way, right? He is too young for that. Still, his skills were clearly on an entirely different level. Questioning who this kid really was, the professor gave the order to resume the march at the first light of dawn. Constant alerts meant zero sleep, and now, the entire class was struggling just to keep their eyes open. Gray Lee, the Black Swordsman, led Squad D without showing a hint of exhaustion, even as another night finally began to fall. Everyone started prepping the camp, desperate for even a single minute of actual rest. To their surprise, the professor announced the day was done, and no more heavy drills were coming. Tents went up in record time as the smell of food filled the air. Soon, exhausted students were collapsing into their beds. Gray Lee knew something was wrong. This much rest felt like a trap. He was certain that tomorrow would be a total living hell. Leon chatted with Gray Lee, convinced that he would absolutely dominate whatever crazy training they had planned next. Professor Heathcote went all out, preparing a massive feast for the hungry students. Buckets of food were brought out, and the instructors told everyone they could eat until they were completely stuffed. After surviving 2 days of pure punishment, the class felt they finally earned a night to recharge their batteries. Now, pay attention, the professor's malicious smile says it all. Tomorrow is going to be brutal, especially once they reach the base of that imposing, massive mountain. The mission was simple: survive the crossing of the lethal transversal zone on Mount Gastia. Every squad lined up behind the professor, heading straight for the treacherous peaks of Gastia. The mountain looked terrifying, but their steady pace kept the students' confidence high as they moved forward. Nobody had fallen behind yet, which was expected from elites who had survived the academy's brutal entrance exams. But the professor dropped a bomb. The real test begins now, because in 2 kilometers, they enter a new zone. This was water lizard territory. These beasts were 10 times more dangerous than anything they had hunted for food before. One wrong move meant being eliminated or worse, actually losing your life in a fight. Pure terror washed over the group at the thought of facing those deadly monsters. They were told to stay invisible during this 2-week training. Since it was the dry season, water lizards barely moved just to save their energy. If the students stayed dead silent, there was a chance the monsters wouldn't even notice them. But here's the catch: since it is the dry season, those lizards are thirsty for any liquid. That means they will happily drink human blood. If a water lizard spots you, it is lights out before you can even blink. This life and death situation reminded Gray Lee of his old monster hunting days with the divine bow. You and I know Gray Lee is a pro at this, and the professor agrees this training is easy for him. But the other students? They were a mess. Looking back, the professor saw them struggling to move without making a sound. Rent was losing his patience, barking at everyone to slow their pace down even further. He promised they would be safe, as long as they stayed quiet and kept up that crawling speed. There was no camping allowed in lizard territory, and the students were already starting to look completely drained. Without specific orders on what to do next, Gray Lee assumed they had already been taught about the safe zones. The noise level was still too high. The professor warned them again to keep it down or face the consequences. As the march continued, the professor gave the final warning. From here on out, talking is strictly forbidden. Any sound at all meant losing points. The students were forced to rely entirely on hand signals to communicate while moving. Even with the silence, the students started to feel like this was just another boring mountain hike. Since the pace was so slow, some began to suspect that the whole dangerous monster thing was just a big lie. They didn't think the academy would actually put them in a room with monsters that could kill them. It felt like a total hoax just to make them practice marching in a straight, quiet line. Suddenly, crack! A student slipped on a loose rock and hit the ground with a loud, echoed thud. Trust me, he is about to learn that losing points is the least of his worries right now. Alright, you and I are about to see things go south fast as water lizards swarm the group. Everyone draws their swords as the predators close in. The fallen boy freezes in pure shock, watching a monster rush straight for him. Suddenly, the wild lizards leap right at the terrified students. Professor Heathcote jumps in, driving his blade straight into a lizard's skull and killing it instantly. One down, but many more to go. Another beast charges fiercely. Leon swings his sword with everything he has, but the blade just bounces off. He can't even leave a single scratch on its tough hide. The monster shifts its focus, charging directly at Leon instead. Heathcote arrives just in time to protect his student, landing a heavy punch on the beast. He warns the students they are outmatched and orders an immediate retreat to safety. This is not a fight they can win. The professors form a perimeter around the lizards, signaling the students to back away immediately. The kids realize the danger when they see even the professors only landing shallow hits. Seeing they are outclassed, the professor explains their only chance. If they can make the beasts bleed a little, the dry season will dehydrate them. They just need to drain their body fluids to bring them down. Leon wonders what would happen if they faced these monsters during the rainy season. The professor's answer is grim. In the rain, the students would just be easy snacks for them. That is why this training only happens after confirming there is absolutely zero chance of rain. He mentions they can finally talk now that the surrounding threats have all been wiped out. Earlier, even a whisper would have meant death. With the area clear, they resume the grueling march up the steep mountain path. They eventually reach the summit, taking down a few stray creatures along the way. When Heathcote finally calls a halt, the exhausted students collapse instantly. Leon is physically fine, but his mind is completely drained from the constant tension. The forced silence made the entire journey feel 10 times more exhausting for everyone. While the others struggle, Leon stays stoic. Heathcote notes that lizard ambushes have been getting much worse lately, making this the toughest training in years. He warns that they will be entering silent territory again soon, and asks if anyone has questions before they move out. It is their last chance to speak. Pay close attention here. Graylee notices something off a single cloud in the sky is growing larger and heading straight for them. Heathcote spots it too, and pulls Professor Wormel aside to discuss the strange weather. Wormel argues that clouds forming during this season should be scientifically impossible. Something is wrong. Seeing the clouds swell even larger, they consider calling off the training and heading back. However, Wormel insists on pushing forward, rain or no rain. He does not want to quit. Heathcote pushes back, arguing that the weather is abnormal and student safety comes first. Training is important, but keeping these kids alive is the real priority here. Wormel, who has led this training for years, tells the others to just trust his veteran instincts. The mustached professor decides to pick up the pace to beat the incoming storm as fast as possible. He sees this as a perfect high-stakes challenge. He tells the students to follow him like their lives depend on it. He is confident that based on their progress, they can handle a little bit of rain. He warns them to stay tight and not waste time fighting every lizard they see. Finally, he firmly demands absolute silence. But just as Gray feared, a massive torrential downpour begins to flood the sky. Heathcote senses something sinister. The air is way too humid. He suspects this rain is not natural. It smells like high-level magic. Even Professor Wormel is starting to get weirded out. This storm definitely should not be happening right now. Now check this out. Leon asks if it is safe to talk, and right then, a massive water lizard lunges at Wormel from behind. Terrible timing, right? The monster slams into the professor with bone-crushing force. It is a heavy hit, but Wormel dodges at the last second and counterattacks the beast instantly. He buries his sword deep into the beast's arm. The lizard lets out a deafening shriek and lashes out with a powerful tail whip that catches him off guard. Wormel barely blocks the strike with his blade. He managed to wound it, but the impact sends him flying backward. The students panic, but the professor somehow manages to scramble back to his feet. Leon is confused. A professor's reflexes should have been fast enough to dodge that attack easily. Yet, Wormel is bleeding and battered. The students are terrified as they realize just how fast these lizards move when it is raining. In the wet weather, these monsters are twice as fast and 10 times more dangerous. Heathcote barks at the students to stay focused as they all prepare to clash. Trust me, you and I are in for one hell of a fight. He strikes the monster's back. You and I better buckle up. But Professor Heathcote gets blindsided by a tail whip, sending him crashing back. The lizard lunges for the kill, but the professor recovers instantly and wipes the creature out for good. Working as a team, the 4 professors finally manage to take down the monsters. But they are all bloodied and bruised, way too injured to keep the training going. Wormel calls it quits and orders everyone to trigger their emergency teleportation spells immediately. The female professor drops a major bombshell. She has been trying to activate the spell, but the magic is completely dead. One of them desperately asks if anyone else can cast a spell to get them out. Another professor explains the grim reality. Someone or something is actively blocking their teleportation. Between the endless rain and blocked signals, they suspect they are being targeted at this specific exit. Wormhole is absolutely terrified, wondering how they will ever escape. One professor suggests their only real option is to hunker down and wait it out. Professor Heathcote suspects this rain is artificial and might eventually stop if they just hold out. They decide staying put is their best bet for survival, since they are too weak to keep fighting. Luckily, that last brutal clash ended without any lives being lost. Knowing Heathcote understands the danger, they move fast to start healing Wormhole's wounds. But there is a catch. Those water lizards get way more active in the rain. Heathcote knows staying put is a death sentence. Now pay attention, because Gray raises his voice and addresses the professor directly with a risky plan. He tells them that as long as recovery magic exists, he can fight by their side. Heathcote agrees. With the boy's power, they actually have a shot at making it through lizard territory. He bets on Gray's body holding up. Gray knows if they just sit here, help will never arrive. But Heathcote gives him a stern warning about that magic. Gray would have to push his limits twice in one day, totally ignoring Ariel's strict orders to stay safe at all costs. Gray sees this as the perfect training. With healers on standby, he is willing to risk it all. Heathcote points out that Ariel wouldn't have stopped him if this was a simple fix. Gray snaps back. There is no other way to get these students home safely. He asks if the professor would really let everyone die just to protect him. Ariel had warned Heathcote that Gray would try to be a hero for others. She begged the professor not to let him do anything irreversible. After weighing the odds, Heathcote ignores Ariel's warning and tells Gray to prepare for battle. Gray Lee is in, but Wormhole stops them, refusing to let them decide alone. She admits Gray's good, but warns against betting everyone's lives on the shoulders of a single student. Heathcote stands his ground, insisting that Gray's power is enough to handle a water lizard solo. You and I know he's special, and the professor is betting everything on him, but Professor Morgan isn't having any of it. He demands they play it safe and send a rescue request instead. Glock already tried to signal headquarters, but the communication is jammed. Professor Gaylock is on it, but they are stuck waiting for a response that might never come. The mustachioed professor argues that moving now would only put them in more danger. He asks Heathcote if he's really willing to gamble with student lives. He warns that they won't survive another wave of those wild creatures. Waiting for reinforcements is the smarter play. Wandering out of the safe zone is suicide. He tells the students to stay quiet before other monsters track them down. The students hunker down under the trees, praying for the rain to stop, until new lizards appear and leave everyone in total shock. Heathcote draws his sword, ready for blood. Gray Lee joins him, blade out and ready to fight. As soon as the beast leaps out, everyone launches a coordinated counterattack. Blades flash as the professors strike from all sides, but one gets slammed by a tail whip, taking some serious damage. Heathcote charges in, unleashing a flurry of strikes at blinding speeds. Together, they drop the lizard. Trust me, we are just getting started. All right, you and I are jumping right into a high-stakes battle where a professor's already down. Meanwhile, two more lizards, drawn by the sounds of chaos, surged forward as our hero prepared to draw his steel. Heathcote reminded everyone that a World Union professor's primary duty is to stand tall and protect their students. Moving with blinding speed and heroic flair, they charged straight at the monsters. The students watched in awe, completely blown away by the sheer power of their instructors. Even outnumbered, the professors controlled the field perfectly, proving exactly why they were top-tier fighters in this world. Heathcote gave the command to focus fire on a single target first to thin out the enemy numbers fast. They immediately pivoted, dodging lethal strikes while pouring everything they had into one lizard. A sword plunged deep into the creature's chest, and the students erupted in cheers as only one monster remained. They were convinced the professors had this fully under control. They saw the professors were barely scratched, with the healer already patching up any minor wounds. Everyone believed the World Union professors were about to wrap this up. But keep your eyes peeled as they charged the final beast. Two armed men suddenly ambushed the professors from behind. Both professors had their arms severed. Gray Lee was the culprit, taking both arms in one blur of motion while the horrified students watched him continue. Heathcote thanked the protagonist for his help, vowing to keep the remaining lizards busy while they sorted this. Once the final lizard fell, the professor turned his attention toward interrogating the two backstabbing traitors. He demanded to know why they tried to murder Heathcote and ordered them to explain their true intentions immediately. Wormhole tried to lie, claiming his arm was ripped off while he was fighting the lizards. The other bulky professor backed up the lie, loudly demanding they arrest the real criminal Gray Lee instead. The remaining professor cut them off, declaring that everyone there saw the betrayal, and the fencing students weren't so blind that they'd let such an obvious move slide. Heathcote mentioned that assassination and kidnapping attempts against Academy members were actually pretty common. Since the Academy was full of high-value targets and powerful enemies, these kinds of incidents happened all the time. He realized the traitors were using the monster attack as a smokescreen to take out a professor. With the guards gone, they planned to eliminate the students or kidnap them for some dark, questionable work. The fencing students stood in total shock after hearing the professor's twisted plan. Heathcote made it clear they survived only because of Grey Lee's reflexes. Our protagonist realized the professor had sensed the danger from the very beginning. Heathcote had already spotted the betrayal before the traitors even made their move. Ormo wondered if their secret plan had leaked, but Grey Lee explained that reading someone's murderous intentions is easy if you watch their eyes and movements. The way the mustachioed man shifted showed he was looking for an opening to kill, not to protect anyone. At first, Grey Lee honestly just thought the guy was useless, but once the rain started falling, his behavior felt completely wrong. Failing to dodge attacks he should have easily avoided raised some serious red flags. Our hero analyzed the injury for a second and realized the damage wasn't even that serious. It looked more like a bad bruise, and his body didn't feel sore at all. Okay, I know what you're thinking, villain time. Exactly. The professor started cackling like a madman, telling Grey Lee it was already too late. They hadn't grasped the true scope of the plan. They were trapped in a habitat teeming with aquatic lizards while the rain poured down. Plus, a powerful teleportation seal had been triggered to block any escape, ensuring no reinforcements would arrive in time. Even if they had figured out the two traitors' scheme, he claimed it was far too late to survive, swearing that every student there would die. But the goal wasn't just to kill them, it was to drag them along to witness the plan. Heathcote wanted to know how they expected to escape. The mustache man replied that Wormel's only condition was for Rent, Heathcote, and Grey Lee to stab themselves in the heart. After all, they couldn't leave anyone alive who might actually interfere with their master plan. Wormel tried to manipulate them, asking if they'd really hesitate when so many young lives were on the line. Just then, another figure emerged from the darkness, and our protagonist instantly blurred behind him. Closing the distance from behind, he pressed his cold steel against the man's throat in a heartbeat. Wormel claimed a hostage changed nothing, but Grey Lee pushed back, knowing this man held the key to teleportation magic. And that's where we leave it. Alright, you and I are about to dive into one of the craziest academy betrayals you have ever seen. But with a magic professor helping him, bypassing the security systems became much simpler. Heathcote couldn't help but mention that Grey Lee was incredibly perceptive for a mere student. Without hesitation, Grey Lee pointed his blade at the professor who controlled the teleportation magic. He ordered the man to activate the teleportation magic immediately, sending all students and staff to the mountain's foot. If he refused, he would lose an eye immediately. If he kept refusing, the other eye would be gouged out next. Watch closely as Grey Lee threatens to slice every finger off the professor's hand. He warned the traitor that if anyone was left behind or sent elsewhere, he would deeply regret it. Worm barked orders for Professor Gaiac to stop the magic, but the man hesitated while being threatened by two swords at once. Professor Heathcote realized there were no other options and unleashed a full power attack on the enemy. However, Professor Rant dropped to his knees, narrowly dodging the strike while bursting into tears. He slammed both hands onto the ground, activating the massive teleportation magic that engulfed every student. The teleportation magic flared to life, instantly warping the first-year fencing squad directly back to the front gates of the academy. Rich explained that their mission in the lizard habitat had turned into a dangerously anomalous situation. An emergency evacuation was required after a faculty-led assassination attempt turned the entire mission into a nightmare. He added that two magic professors were acting as accomplices right alongside the traitorous Worm. The students all confirmed Professor Rich's story about the assassination attempt, testifying that they had truly been in a terrifying, life-threatening situation. Leon then declared that Grey Lee and Professor Heathcote saw through the scheme and saved them all. An older professor rushed forward, asking if anyone was injured and in need of immediate treatment. The healer approached, but stopped cold when she saw the two professors were missing their right hands. Okay, I know what you are thinking, handcuffs for everyone? Trust me, this academy does not take potential informants lightly. Each professor was interrogated separately. After the academy directors confirmed the stories, everyone waited in the courtroom for the final verdict. Director Alexandro slammed his gavel down, demanding silence from everyone in the courtroom. He announced the judgment regarding the attempted kidnapping and assassination of the first-year squad. The incident was orchestrated by Worm and his accomplice Balin, with the help of two magic professors designated for emergencies. Gallic and Rant used the enclosed environment they created to try and kidnap the defenseless students. These three professors were caught in the act of executing their twisted criminal plan. With the evidence clear, the academy laws were invoked to sentence the three traitors. The traitorous professors were sentenced to death, but first, they would be interrogated using any means necessary, including torture, to uncover every single one of their hidden accomplices. Once the investigation was fully concluded, the executions would be carried out immediately. The director added that they would not die quickly. A long, painful process was still ahead of them. When Armin claimed he had already confessed everything to avoid interrogation, the director just glared at him sternly. Sensing a terrifying dark energy from the director, Armand panicked and tried to bolt from the courtroom. A professor grabbed him and slammed him down so hard that Heathcote was injured in the fall. Visibly irritated, the director ordered the three main culprits to be taken away for immediate interrogation. Gaiac was definitely guilty, but because he abandoned the plan and helped the students at the final moment, he was granted a significantly reduced sentence. He prevented massive collateral damage by helping them escape, so he would not face the executioner. However, living is not always a mercy, as Gaiac would still have to face severe consequences. Heathcote realized that Gray Lee had been through hell since the moment he entered the academy, but he noticed Gray Lee seemed strangely accustomed to being right in the middle of these problems. Heathcote never imagined that so many criminals were hiding in plain sight as academy professors. It was hard to believe this was supposed to be the best educational institution in the world. This place was nothing like the prestigious school he had imagined before he arrived. So what do you and I take from this? That this academy is not just a school, but a brutal selection process where graduates only succeed because they were already elite. Meanwhile, stick with me, Heathcote is about to ask Gray Lee for his honest opinion on the professor's true level of power. He's certain of one thing: he's grown significantly stronger since he first stepped foot into this academy. He's leagues beyond his old self back in the village. Still, he agrees with the professor, the academy as a whole isn't to be trusted. But teachers like Heathcote and Ariel, they're the only ones he truly trusts. For Gray Lee, that's plenty. Heathcote realizes the boy isn't just speaking as a student, but as someone who genuinely respects them both. He warns the boy that from now on, the academy's training is about to get way harder. Everything up until now? Just light conditioning. A simple warm-up for the absolute hell that's coming next. Heathcote promises that Gray Lee is going to reach a whole new level of strength starting today. Gray Lee really hopes so getting stronger is his life's mission. Soon, the group is congratulated for finishing their field march. Despite all the chaos, the class gets their praise. This march marks the official end of their basic physical training phase. Now pay attention before explaining the next phase. Heathcote decides to show them exactly what he expects. He puts the professor's elite training and overwhelming abilities on full display. One professor completely shatters a metal pillar, 145 millimeters in diameter. The professor explains that if they can replicate that feat in a single cut, they'll be promoted to the second year. Fail to do it by the end of the semester, you're expelled. Every single year, half the student body fails this task and gets kicked out of the academy for good. He stresses that very few actually graduate from World Union Academy. Most people either give up or get the boot. He explains that your life after being expelled depends on the year it happens. If you're dropped in your first year, you're just sent back to a regular, run-of-the-mill academy in your hometown. Because of the training they've already had, they usually skip a grade without even trying. They'd be the top student instantly. Or, if they'd rather work, they could join the Royal Guard as an elite swordsman instead. To the outside world, anyone who makes it into World Union Academy is seen as anything but ordinary. Even the dropouts have talent, they just aren't as skilled as those who keep moving. Gray Lee recalls Ariel's words about the massive gap between this academy and every other school in the world. The professor tells the students not to stress about being expelled just yet. You and I know they're nervous, and they even ask if cutting a pillar like that is actually possible. The professor hands a blade to one student and tells him to give it a shot himself. The kid strikes the pillar, but the sword flies right out of his hand. The rebound leaves him clutching his wrist in pure agony. The professor snaps at him. Dropping your sword is unacceptable. A real swordsman never lets go of their blade. Gray Lee asks if they're allowed to use a specific sword. He mentions that, with the blade Ariel gave him, he could do this easily. But the professor insists on using standard academy swords only. Gray figures that even with his current sword, he could probably make the cut right now using his mysterious power. But to truly pass, he needs to do it without relying on special abilities. He starts brainstorming how to blend his technique and raw strength to pull this off. Gray realizes that with this level of power, he's on track to become an executioner in the future. Thinking back to his past life, he knows he has to get stronger. The professor sees the students looking worried. He says he knows what they're thinking. Is it really possible to cut something that solid with a sword? Or do they need Gray Lee's monstrous strength just to pass the year? He clarifies that's not the case. The veteran teachers are far stronger than Gray Lee. Even without looking physically different, the power gap between students and teachers is insane. The secret? Channeled life force infused directly into the blade itself. Gray Lee remembers hearing about this in his past life. Life force is the key to refining supercompressed ether. The academy clearly mastered a way to apply this to swordsmanship, and now they're finally going to teach the students how. The professor explains that nowadays, you don't need to understand complex theories to actually use these high-level techniques. He pulls out a demonic sword designed to drain and force life energy directly into the blade. Master that feeling, and they can do it with normal swords. Trust me, you and I need to see what Gray does next. Alright, You and I are about to see a training session that is actually a matter of life and death. The professor asks for volunteers, but the students hesitate, waiting for someone else to test the energy-draining sword first. Gray Lee finds the sword name weird, but he steps up, determined to grow even stronger through this trial. The moment he volunteers, Leon also raises his hand. Leon is still fuming over his helplessness during the water lizard attack. Professor Rent knows Gray Lee can handle it, but he needs a more relatable example for the class. He asks Leon to step forward and try the demonic sword. The prodigy holds the blade and feels his life force being drained. The professor gives the order to strike immediately and sheath the weapon right after. Leon Hart slashes the pillar with terrifying force, cutting nearly halfway through the solid material. It is an insane display of raw power, but the backlash is brutal. He falls unconscious to the floor. Leon manages to sheath the blade, but he is left crawling helplessly. The teachers rush over to check his pulse. Professor Rent says it is normal at first, so don't push too hard. This total exhaustion is only temporary. Leon just needs rest, and honestly, he performed much better than anyone expected. He did not even drop the sword. Gray Lee is called next. The students are shocked he did not hesitate. Even after watching Leon collapse, our main character steps up and draws the demonic blade with total focus. His life force is draining fast. He cannot endure this for long. Now watch closely, even with all his talent. Our main character delivers a powerful strike, yet even he cannot slice the pillar apart. This is no normal draw. It feels like his blood is freezing solid. He sheathes the blade calmly, looking like he is completely fine. Professor Rent is speechless. He has never seen a freshman stay standing after using that demonic weapon. Maybe it is his energy reserves from training, or maybe his body is just used to being pushed to the breaking point. Professor Rent asks if he can repeat that feat. Gray strikes again, but his eyes close as he loses consciousness. He manages to sheath the sword before hitting the floor. Rent admits he was only joking and did not expect a second attempt with that demonic blade. He sees how Gray achieved such absurd strength for his age. While the two recover, Rent talks to the rest of the class. He shows that using life force creates an incredibly powerful attack. Even a novice can break steel here. It is only taught at this academy. No other academy teaches this. Does anyone know the reason? A student suggests it is because of the risk of death. Okay, I know what you are thinking. Rent clarifies that no student has ever actually died using this sword. Leon believes the reason is the sword's rarity. Rent scoffs, noting they have 30 of them. The real issue is the massive death toll from past battles. That is why it is restricted. If you pass out on a battlefield, the enemy will kill you before you wake up. To use this in combat, you must be able to move. Gray says no one outside can do such a feat. Rent agrees. Activating it once is useless. You only master it when using it becomes second nature. Otherwise, the sword's power is the one using you. This is how countless swordsmen lost their lives. The students ask if they should use such a dangerous weapon. Everyone must learn this to advance. It will be in the next session. Class is dismissed. Practice on your own, but please try not to faint and ruin your other classes. Gray needs to use this power without fainting. Fainting after one use is useless, just like his secret ability. Trust me, you and I need to see if Gray can master this power without needing a healer. Alright, you and I are about to watch our main character push his limits to the limit to defeat the Liquidator. This proves that joining the academy was the best move he ever made. No other place could help him grow this fast. By mixing this power with his secret technique, he knows he is becoming a literal monster. Over at the second training ground, students watch in awe as Gray Lee nearly shreds a massive pillar with his sword. He rests for 3 minutes after every swing, balancing his mana use with life force recovery. Gray starts getting the rhythm. Even though it is slow, he grabs a normal sword to test his limits, despite feeling totally exhausted. Gray Lee is desperate to hold on to that strange sensation still burning in his body. Just as he is about to draw his blade again, a sudden voice breaks his focus. A student tells him that Professor Ariel wants him to try mastering the life force sword completely solo. She wants to witness it herself, so the student goes to fetch her while Gray Lee waits, surprised she has the time. The student figures the professor predicted his success and cleared her entire schedule just for this moment. It is shocking to Gray that she actually expected him to master a legendary sword art in a single day. He already expected this from her divine eye, but it is still wild. Ariel arrives, apologizes for the delay, and asks him to resume his sword training. Standing beside her is a mysterious hooded woman whose hidden face leaves Gray Lee feeling frustrated and annoyed. Ariel assumes he is tired and says her team is there to heal him. Gray relied on them to regain his life. He decides to start with the magical, life-draining blade first to really lock in that feeling. Ariel watches him like a hawk, letting him move purely based on his own warrior intuition. Gray pulls off another spinning strike with the demon blade, lunging forward to deliver a cut that nearly levels the pillar. He is hunting for that same feeling, trying to pull that raw power back to the surface. Switching to a normal sword, Gray attempts to manually draw life force directly from his own physical body. Now, pay attention here. This is where the training turns dark as vital energy flows from his heart into the sword and something totally unexpected and insane occurs. Out of nowhere, Gray's arm turns a deep, burning red. It is the energy of the Black Swordsman, a power totally different from life force, now mixing with his own. His life force is being sucked into that dark power, which seems absolutely starved for more energy. Suddenly, his life is being drained against his will. He has lost all control as this terrifying power manifests. Without warning, Gray's arm is violently torn away by an Academy swordsman to save his life. That arm was overflowing with monstrous energy. Ripping it off was the only way to stop the disaster. Ariel knew that these unique powers and life force were a recipe for total chaos. Even the last Divine Eye user struggled with this. The woman who removed Gray's arm was actually the healer, Rafa Elixir. As she heals him, Rafa realizes that Gray's power is unbelievably twisted and strange. She stops the bleeding first, before unleashing a high-level, forced regeneration spell on his body. Gray's missing right arm actually starts growing back. Bones, muscles, and nerves all begin to reform and reconnect. Ariel is stunned by the magnificent technique. Rafa looks genuinely proud to be a master of the healing arts. She thanks Professor Ariel for being the one to discover her incredible talent for healing. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Getting your arm torn off and then regrown in hours? That's absolutely insane even for this world. Professor Ariel is sitting right there when he wakes up, asking if he remembers the nightmare. Gray remembers it all. The moment he tried using the life force sword, his power just went berserk. His energy was gone, and his arm was torn off. He is shocked to see it back and remembers nothing else. Seeing his memory is fine, Ariel simply hands him some food to help him recover. Gray eats and asks if she saw this coming. Ariel admits she was not sure, but she has seen it before. She mentions a past incident where the famous Amy White tried to harness her life force too. That is exactly why Ariel had to be there. Gray is stunned to hear that the legendary sword saint Amy White went through that same nightmare. Ariel explains that Amy could not handle the mixed power, causing her entire arm to explode. Gray is horrified. The sword saint's arm exploded, but somehow, he survived with his body still intact. She avoided an amputation, but the shock was massive, and trust me, we need to see what happens next. Alright, you and I are about to watch Gray take on a training method that would literally kill anyone else. He sees that despite her fear of using life force, she mastered it anyway. Professor Ariel confirmed it, even though mastering that power was nearly impossible. Gray asked about her secret. Ariel explained she used a magic contract to bind the Sword Saint's power. They slowly loosened that seal while Amy trained, letting her pull out just her life force. Gray was shocked that magic contracts even had such a specialized function. Professor Ariel, however, warned him. This magic cannot suppress alien energy and simply will not work on Gray. Even Amy's energy broke the contract in under 3 minutes. Against Gray's massive power, it wouldn't last half a second. Simply put, her old method is useless here. Ariel felt terrible. Gray's alien power is so unique that there are no formulas or guides to help him out. She said it's not impossible, but he'd need insane amounts of training to isolate and extract that life force. However, she couldn't imagine a way to safely train since his life force would immediately spiral out of control. Gray realized that if he lost control every time, practice would be impossible. But watch this. Gray suggests something absolutely insane, cutting off his own arm every time he loses control and using healing magic. If she could provide instant recovery magic, he'd just keep going. Ariel was completely stunned. She could find a healer for him. She asked if he was truly serious, since he could just ignore the life force entirely. After all, Gray's natural strength already far surpassed the power of that cursed, life-draining sword. With his current skills, passing the Ascension exam would be easy. But Gray wasn't just looking to become a second-year student. He wanted to get stronger every single year. Professor Eleliel already knew he'd say that. So, she agreed to provide the healing and someone to perform the cuts. First, Gray wanted to use the life-draining sword to sharpen his instincts. Next, he needed someone brave enough to actually chop off his arm. The professor told the observers to strike the moment Gray lost control. His arm would take a day to heal, but the pain would be unimaginable. But Professor Eleliel was rooting for Gray during this whole process. Gray thanked the professor for supporting his crazy plan. Meanwhile, the other students were struggling just to move the pillars. They were learning, but the sword made them pass out after only 30 minutes of training. Pushing any harder would have permanently ruined their bodies. As they left, they saw Gray with 2 swords. You see that too, right? Gray hasn't fainted once because his stamina is on a completely different level than theirs. By the next morning, Gray was already back at it again. They were shocked. He'd been using that life-draining sword since dawn without a single break. One student figured he must be taking rests because 30 minutes usually kills a person. If he really went all day, he'd definitely be dead. At that moment, Gray swapped blades and collapsed, falling face first into the dirt. He was pushing himself to the limit. He felt like he wasn't making any progress with the demonic sword. This rudimentary, self-taught method was all he had to work with. He wondered if he could pull out life force without the blade. Remembering the Liquidator, he pushed the darkness away and kept going. Gray closed his eyes, focusing entirely on that energy. He unsheathed his blade and delivered a perfect strike that pulverized the pillar. Was this the first time he'd actually managed to— "Trust me, you and I just saw a legend slice that pillar,"